basically causing some of the issues. So all of that was going on pretty much from January through the summer. We did a first presentation in July, and then continued to gather data from the system, and then compiled everything, finished the model, and then came up with like a water quality issues and alternatives recommendations. So that kind of brought us to the end of the year, very beginning of end of 2025, beginning of 2026, and now we're here to do the presenting.
Sure. So summary of this slide. At this scale, impossible for you guys to read, so looking at it in the context of this room, apologize for presenting it to you in this way. In essence, this gives you a lot of detail and context for spending about a year and a half essentially characterizing the nature of your system, its problems, and coming up with the most efficient way to try to iteratively solve it. Okay. So if we could please advance to the next slide. Me?
Okay. Yeah, that one's you.
Sure. Sure. Okay, so again, Karen and I work collaboratively on problems of this kind. And the first thing to understand about water distribution systems in general, and in particular the water distribution system that serves the borough, is that they are often very old. And it's difficult to begin to imagine because most folks that have a job, work on some other subject that is not this particular piece of expertise, really have no reason to imagine the materials of construction, the configuration, or the conditions in which these pieces of infrastructure serve. This is a little difficult to start to have the conversation. But long story short, like almost all infrastructure that serves communities, they're composed of physical materials that tend to age and degrade over time. And there's a kind of a common sentiment that I think that's held by everybody. I am, for instance, the water engineer in my own town. Serve in a community where my wife is a teacher, and everyone feels rightfully empowered to ask us questions about the condition of our systems, as you all might with your own elected officials, folks that work for you. What the heck is the condition of the system? Are we working on it to make it both safe and palatable to drink? So your system has a variety of different construction materials, some of which are older, and for the sections of the system that are characterized by older metallic pipe, those pipes tend to, and this is intuitive once you begin to think about it, tend to corrode over years or decades of service. Again, this is not just typical to Waldwick system, this is every system in the developed world. So on the time scale of over 100 years, these have been the typical materials of construction, essentially anywhere that modern water distribution systems have been constructed and put into operation, essentially with water that's available either from the ground, from groundwater sources, or from surface water sources. Again, your system is incredibly typical of, let's say, the aging and the water quality conditions that come from aging as a result of systems like this being in service on the time scale of decades or sometimes even centuries. So what you are seeing at the macro scale essentially is the results of long chronic exposure to corrosion and this is significant, in recent decades, really in recent years, there have been many changes at both the federal and state level to the way that systems like yours, and in particular the way that Waldwick is operated. So you have seen decisions made by your leadership and by us as your consulting engineers in various cases to consolidate the way that sources are configured, the way that they're pumped into the distribution system. We're going to get into a little bit more detail on that in a minute. Again, at the system-wide scale, what that does is effectively changes flow patterns in the system. So different experiences that you might have had for water quality at your tap, at your kitchen sink, in your shower, what have you, could have changed over the course of years, again, or decades, as the flow patterns in the system have changed. That was one of the big motivating factors that caused us to advise the borough that it might be a good idea, again, to me, when you're attempting to manage a system like this, the best approach is to think, how can I most effectively spend the limited resources that I have to get the most reliable, safe, and in particular, let's say, non-offensive tasting water that essentially is clear, predictable, and plentiful. So we essentially looked at the background quality of your water, modeled the system and came up with an array of different solutions, essentially, that will take, let's say, the borough from the current situation that it's in right now through a series of iterative steps that will allow it to, again, that's really the correct word, to step by step improve the quality and predictability of the quality of the water in town. Could we advance to the next slide?
But beforehand, just so you know, the image of the pipe is a stock image. So
That's not a way.
it's a stock image. So just figured I'd clarify that.
Right, right.
Okay, I'll jump in for this one. So essentially, I've been working with Mike for several years, again, on the compliance part of it, mostly just kind of looking at water quality samples that need to be collected, how to address things. So when these issues started coming in, we had some chats through 2024 before starting an official program in early 2025. But Waldwick was tracking some of the complaints that were coming in, because obviously enough people were lodging the complaints through the latter part of 2024. So they did set up a system, they provided us with some data, and this was something that was in the first phase of work, but taking a look at those to throw them on a map and just try to see what kind of pattern we see. So that was like one of the initial things of looking at water quality data, water main break data, was there a connection? Again, unfortunately, didn't know what the screen would look like, but it shows like different water main complaint issues throughout the system and where they were maybe a little bit more clustered.
So aside from knowing the configuration of the system, we tried to get as specific and pointed as possible about understanding where there were negative behaviors in the system, frankly, so that we could focus on spending our energy, let's say, again, the most efficiently, on characterizing the existing problems and coming up with ways to solve them. So if we could please advance to the next slide.
Yep.
So in moving from essentially a two-dimensional picture of a system like this into actually having a model that works, let's say duplicating the system digitally in 3 dimensions, and also coming up with ways to characterize it behaviorally, we went through, let's say, a significant amount of effort with the folks who are professional water system operators that serve your system, and used our own staff of engineers to come up with characterizing data, both for the way that flows occur in your system and for the behaviors of your sources, your tanks, and how they interact together through the system of controls that, let's say, largely automate the behaviors of your system. And again, the reason for this is not just having a model. It's so that when we look at the existing behaviors of the system, and in particular suggestions for how you might spend your money, which frankly, every dollar of it in a situation like this is precious. Our objective is to know with some degree of certainty ahead of time what the future behaviors of the system are going to be. Again, so that we can mitigate essentially unintended consequences and focus on solutions that are going to solve problems rather than essentially solving something and creating another problem. So again, the objective of having a model like this is so that we can look at what-if scenarios ahead of time and understand the likely behaviors of the system downstream of the suggestions that we make, both for changes to standard operating procedures and to potential improvements to the system if we got to the point where those suggestions were ever made. Next slide, please. So this slide sort of just says the same thing. There's a little, maybe we dive a hair too deep into sort of the nerdy depths of how, of how model creation occurs here. And suffice it to say, the best summary of this is that we spent a pretty significant amount of time building and calibrating the model according to the industry standards, so that aside from the exercise that we're doing now, it becomes an asset and a tool to you later, so that when you are doing this, of course, you're solving problems in a way that is actually characterized by the configuration and behavior of the system, but as you consider capital improvements in the future, as every system in the state is compelled to do, not just you, you actually have a basis for evaluating how they might behave. And again, to me, the objective of a system like this, aside from safe, reliable water and consistent, reliable compliance, is knowing that you're doing things most efficiently. So when we composed this, we tried to make it useful as a future tool as well.
Yeah, and that future tool then can be like if there's a change to the system of a different source, changing sources, changing, like adding new houses or new, basically new customers, how does that affect the flow? So that this model has a dual purpose of taking care of looking at the water quality issue and trying to understand that, but then also for future planning.
Yes, yes. The frustrating, but sort of the reality you admit about any infrastructure system like this is that it's always in a state of flux. It's always evolving or degrading in some way, and even if it's not, the system and the people that it serves themselves are always changing in some fashion their behaviors, so it needs to be inherently flexible. So Karen's spot on in her description. If we could please advance to the next slide. Lots more data. If you wanted to get really into it, if anybody was fascinated by data, we could show you the degree of calibration and how we got to getting the system to behave, again, in a way that is predictably a mimic for how your system physically behaves in the real world. We can probably skip this and keep on going.
Yep.
There's going to be a couple more slides like this that basically say we're pretty darn sure that the model behaves in its digital format almost exactly as it behaves in the field. Again, this is just a good piece of information in case anybody was wondering. There are 5 active groundwater sources in town, that's one of those pieces of information that not everybody has a reason to know, but they are well monitored and maintained by your in-house professionals.
Yeah, and at the time of this, actually, one of the there is another one. It was offline, so we had to go with the data that was available from their system operations.
Again,
so we downloaded.
System always in flux. So let's move to the next slide. Okay, so little visually busy for you to see at this scale, but looking at those two side by side, if you stared at it long enough, it would be like one of those comparison puzzles that you get put in front of you as kids. You would eventually see different details jump out, and the point of this is to indicate that there was a fair amount of effort put into the theory of how your system would behave, which is represented by the picture on the left, as opposed to the actual behaviors of your system, which is represented by the picture on the right. This slide just sort of visually validates the fact that calibration was done, and it was significant for calibration to occur here, mostly because of what we discovered about the behavior of pipes in the system, and that in turn really more accurately characterizes how water flows in the system in terms of volume, in terms of the activity of different wells on a day-to-day basis, and in particular flow pathways, because when you are addressing and potentially suggesting that a given entity spend money on correcting the behaviors of a given system or potentially to clean or replace certain pipelines, it's really kind of critically important essentially to understand how water flows through it, especially for a system of this scale. You guys are not particularly a small system, and understanding the macroscopic behaviors of a system like this is the key to getting it right. Again, pointing back to if we were going to make suggestions on either changing standard operating procedures or making some fixes to the system, we want it to be in an informed fashion.
I want to quickly do the colors, like basically what that tells you about the...
Sure. So if you were to look at this slide in detail, and anyone in this room we produce these on your behalf. So the colors essentially scale the roughnesses of the pipe. And the best way to think about it is that the greater those roughnesses, and this is counterintuitive, the values in there, that means the smoother the pipe. So for instance, on the right-hand side, which is the picture you should pay attention to, that is how the system is actually calibrated. Those darker blue and green pipes are considered physically smoother than some of the older, rougher pipes throughout the system. Now, that might say to you, if your pipes are characterized as red or yellow, well, do I have problems in front of my house? Am I worried about water quality? The answer is maybe. It is one of the beginning indicators or telltales for us as professionals to begin to figure out where we might concentrate, not only on where evaluations would occur, but where potential sources might be for rusty water at, say, your kitchen tap or in your shower or what have you. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so having developed an understanding of how the system is configured and how it behaves, I want to sort of begin by cheating and telling you guys the conclusions that you're going to see in the last slide. And that is that for consulting engineers like us, or geologists in Karen's case, when we look at the systems of this kind and we look at potential failure modes and we look at what's going wrong, we see rusty water, we see water that may be, let's say, have the potential for optimization. We begin by looking at the simplest solutions that you can accomplish with your own forces and that cost the least amount of money to resolve, because we are attempting to grasp at the lowest hanging fruit first. Again, our recommendation to you is to look at those simple solutions, solve those simpler problems, check those boxes, and then move on as you begin to understand system behaviors to the more expensive, the more exotic, and the more complex solutions. So very intuitively, the first recommendation that any consulting engineer, particularly any civil engineer, will make for maintaining water quality in a system like this is something that you are already doing from a behavioral standpoint, but stepping up the frequency and the intensity of it, and that is using hydrant flushing to blow off strategic locations in the system. Now, when you begin to think about it, there's a very intentional methodology or intent behind that, and that's to raise the velocity in the system to the point where, for some of your medium-sized pipes or larger pipes, you're achieving what is known as scouring velocity. So you have pipe, let's say for argument's sake, it's 6 or 8 or maybe 12 inches in diameter. A lot of flow has to be achieved through a pipe like that in order to scour sediment up from the bottom of the pipe and potentially break off the corrosion that you saw depicted maybe in a little bit harsher sense than is accumulated in most of the pipes around town, and begin to essentially flush those areas of the system that now experience the most regular and profound discoloration.
And it's a standard tool that twice a year, right? Usually like spring and fall, a lot of systems will do that. And the idea is, again, to move water during different flow periods of throughout the year. So summer, more flow in general, more people using water in general, especially up in this area. So this kind of allows them to make sure that there's not like some dead end type areas or areas that maybe don't see that much flow, is to make sure that you're cleaning those out. So
That's
it's
quite
kind of
right.
a standard tool.
And with acknowledgments for public safety, so not during periods of predictable freezing, and certainly not during periods of extremely high demand in the summertime. We can make recommendations to expand the scope, the frequency, and the intensity of these flushing programs if it turns out that the licensed operator and superintendent in the system see improved behavior and the water quality that we see when we're flushing, and that we sample. It is also possible, based on best practice in the industry, and this is an approved technique that's used by not only the New Jersey DEP, but it's used essentially everywhere in developed countries in developing truly sort of the upper end of scouring velocities for systems like this, is that especially when you have a model such as we've developed for the town, you can come up with, and we have begun to execute, a model of the system that allows you to strategically close valves and induce very high scouring velocities in the system for areas of pipe that are considered more problematic, but also are characterized by enough wall thickness and physical integrity to take those higher flushing velocities. So again, the second option here is a more intensified and let's say situation-specific version of flushing that can be used to achieve some very intentional velocities and really scour the system to the point where not only sediment is being moved, but potentially where tuberculation, again, that's the technical term for corrosion inside pipelines of this kind, where tuberculation is being broken off and carried out of the mains. Okay, so those are the two solutions. I want to give you some idea of timeline, because when someone comes to talk to you about this, I believe, and Karen and I have spoken on this subject at length, I believe that the right question is, well, when is this going to occur? And how much money is it going to cost? And are there risks associated with it? So, of course, we welcome these questions from council, but we also welcome them from members of the public. Understanding the dozens of situations where we've made these recommendations, what we would encourage the system operators to do is to accomplish these early system-specific, these are essentially enhancements or changes to standard operating procedures, in the winter and the spring running up to your highest seasons of pumping and demand. And that's when we recommend that you sort of take a break. The water that's available to the system at that time is probably a touch too precious to be using essentially for flushing. And we believe that the months through this coming spring are probably sufficient to characterize essentially the endpoints of when these practices will be effective for you. Not only that, when you perform flushing of this kind, it doubles as testing and moments for data collection for both us and the system operators, and gives us the opportunity to look and say to ourselves, we have more data for our model, number one. Number two, we have information about water quality that suggests where we might move on to another deeper set of solutions. So if we could please advance to the next slide.
Pat, just wanted to note that the borough is currently and has been doing number one for the locational
Yeah.
flushing. So we've been working through that process with the water department.
And we did take the output of the model and came up with something that was a little different and systematic and provided that to Mike. And I think that's going through the fall and into this spring. So as you're seeing all the alerts on the hydrant flushing, part of that is working with the new recommendations that came out of the model, and then just to see how that varies compared to the way they did in the past.
Yes, I'm sorry. I characterized that as if it was future tense. You're right. That is, in fact, a current practice, and the first option, flushing, is an ongoing practice that essentially has been part of system SOPs in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Again, the unidirectional flushing option is used in special cases. So once you get a good sense of the water quality results that you anticipate seeing from hydrant flushing and unidirectional flushing, it's possible to develop an understanding based on that and some of the system information that we have about construction of various pieces of the water distribution system to come up with places where we would recommend either pigging, which is essentially an industry term for mechanical cleaning of the interior of pipes. That is where we can use mechanical swabs, typically rubber or metal, occasionally ice. Some folks that may have some industry experience are familiar with the notion that the pigging operation is sometimes, but not always, accomplished with blocks of ice. Regardless, each of those operations, however they're configured, have the same intent. The idea is to clean the interior of pipes that still have enough physical strength and mechanical integrity to stand up to that operation. So that rather than dealing with the chronic problem of water quality being bad, flushing occurring in a temporary solving problem, and then you coming back to the same problem, pigging, in essence, renews the interior surface of the pipe. Now, there is another version of that is essentially inducing unidirectional flushing in specific lengths of pipe using a portable mechanical pumping system. It is as if you are introducing the possibility, and that's the fourth solution up there, that you are introducing the possibility of unidirectional flushing at a velocity that can't be achieved simply by special valving configurations inside the distribution system. So each of these techniques is significantly more costly than going ahead and simply using flushing. Again, the first two solutions are not free, but they are available to you as a function of current, essentially, staffing and employees within both Public Works and the water distribution system. These solutions use contractors and typically cost on the scale of tens of thousands of dollars. Now, neither of us would ever be cavalier about institutional budget, but in the scale of municipal infrastructure projects, that is a relatively low-cost solution. It is certainly cheaper, let's say, by comparison, than cleaning and lining existing water main, and certainly cheaper than replacing water main. But those are the solutions that sometimes systems get to, especially when their water distribution systems are characterized by age or by chronic corrosion, as we've observed in some parts of the system. So again, to sort of marry this with our original theme, we're moving on here with our third and fourth solutions at essentially interim steps that cost you some money but will not represent radical changes to the municipal budget. We would not consider these, for instance, capital improvements. We would just essentially consider these operational investments in cleaning and optimizing the system. These are also very mature technologies. They're used essentially everywhere in the United States and frankly all around the developed world. So there's not a ton of risk introduced to the system. The only risk, frankly, is spending some budget in achieving a little bit better water quality.
Next.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry, I thought I heard somebody asking me. That's my name. So moving on from those solutions, which are kind of essentially meant to clean or optimize what you have already, there's a moment where we would say to the system superintendent and to folks in leadership functions within the town, it's probably good to pause here and ask if it makes sense for us to mobilize a contractor or potentially public works forces to go to strategic locations in town and perform the dual functions of what is known as test pitting and pipe couponing. And what that means from a practical standpoint is using the data that we have from flushing, from sampling, from analysis, and saying to ourselves, all right, here's where the rubber meets the road. There is a serious enough concern in, let's say, a half a dozen locations around town where we want to characterize two things. We want to go and verify our suspicions and take a look and see if the corrosion is as thorough and as chronic as we think it is. And in addition to that, we want to go and sample and find out what the condition and thickness is of the existing pipe walls in the system. Is the pipe very old? Has corrosion robbed its wall thickness and material so much that operations like pigging that we had discussed before, pumping unidirectional flushing, the so-called no-des solution, would those be effective, or would those potentially risk a main break? If we can convince ourselves that there is enough reliable pipe thickness, we might recommend to the town, because it is relatively the more efficient solution, that a cleaning and lining program be undertaken in a few different locations in town. For places where the corrosion is equally bad, but there is so little wall thickness that we don't trust the pipe integrity, in a few situations, we might recommend that the town adopt essentially an amendments to its capital program and consider the possibility of replacing some water main, either with new ductile iron or potentially with plastic pipe in accordance essentially with state and national regulations. Again, those are the kind of decisions that we would come to through a consensus with your superintendent and licensed operator, and the objective would be simply to give you the longest and most predictable service life into the future with the least water quality problems.
Okay, and just throwing in here also, New Jersey DEP came out with what they call Water Quality Accountability Act, where looking at water mains is part of that.
Right.
And you are supposed to be looking and having a replacement plan for 150 year?
Yes.
But
Yes.
they also realize that some of the older stuff maybe is holding up better. So when we say older, sometimes that doesn't mean like, it's not like, oh, this one's old, this is the oldest one, we're gonna dig it out. That might be in better condition than something else. So that would be part of that spot checking based on what we're seeing. It would be to take a look, and maybe it's not the oldest pipe in the system that needs to be changed, but something else. And I think most people can kind of figure that, even like with any home type of repair. It's like, might not be like the old stuff, it's like, nah, you can't destroy that. But this newer thing I got, I'm gonna throw it away already. Like, so, but it's looking at it.
Right.
And again, making sense, because it's not our money to spend. And I'm not being cavalier on that, but that's always part of that focus, is understanding that it's part of the rates and paying into the thing to make the best choice for the borough and water system.
Right. So to sum up, our recommendation to the borough is going to be to continue with its current flushing practices and to work with us to identify places to intensify them over the remainder of the spring. Using the data that we collect toward the end of the spring and over the summertime, we plan to make a set of recommendations for potentially either intensified flushing, for cleaning and lining, and in very selected places for potentially 2 to 3 true pipe replacement projects. Again, that would come with the mutual advice of your water system superintendent and of course your business administrator, because we would want to be very careful and sort of targeted in how we make use of that which was kind of the ultimate solution and therefore the most costly and time intensive.
Nick? More simple graphic for everything he just said.
Yeah, we could have spared you the last half hour and just showed you this slide. So this really is kind of a good summary. And again, our objective on your behalf is to be very rigorous from a technical standpoint and to know enough to have a constructive conversation, frankly, with any of you about the condition of the system, any questions you might have about your own property, and try to be as constructive and useful on your behalf as possible. Then, knowing and looking ahead, because we have solved these problems in the past, attempt to give you and your leadership essentially a tool set that allows you to achieve what most people think of essentially as the best bang for your buck. how do I solve the easiest problems first with the least resources and focus the bigger resources that I have on the true problem areas of the system. This slide essentially says what I just said.
Yep.
We have a tendency to do that.
Right? Sorry, we jumped ahead.
That's okay.
So the objective, essentially, in taking the analysis that we've performed to date and sort of the roadmap that we have for you, is to use this year to implement our solutions in a stepwise fashion that is very careful and measured and always allows you essentially access to what we're doing. We're totally transparent. And these techniques, while they sound like there's some complexity and we focus essentially on the idea of iteration and taking small steps, they reflect the industry standard for characterizing and solving problems of this kind. And again, these solutions or this solution set or tool set is used everywhere in the country, especially for systems of this age, complexity, and material composition of the pipelines. So that, I think, essentially completes our conversation, our presentation. Again, we're very grateful for the opportunity to come in and present both to elected officials and to residents of the town. And I'll make one last point. Sitting in situations like this, you may feel, all right, I've just digested a lot of information. We're, of course, available to answer any questions that you have now. We're also available to answer questions that may pop into your head at 3 in the morning. Happens to me all the time. I wish I had been able to ask that question. We work for you guys. So.
3 in the morning, call his son. No.
Thank
But
you,
I-
Pat. Thank you, Karen. If we could start with the council on some questions and then
Very
open
good.
it up to the public. Thank
Right.
you.
We started a couple of these projects already. We've been working on some stuff. Mike, would you mind just explaining what we've done so far and how you feel about it, what's going on? I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're the one that we go to at all times.
So far, we have started implementing our flushing program that you guys recommended. I don't know, talk to everybody, I guess. We started somewhere in the beginning of January. Of course, weather has been, weather has been a problem with all the snow and the ice, and we're not going to be flushing when it's below 32 degrees out. So we've been starting, then stopping, picking up where we left off. But we're, I would say, relatively about halfway through our flushing program right now. And I've seen less complaints, in my opinion, than we have in the past. So the flushing program you guys implemented was more of a directional type flushing. No valve closure, but we have been, again, with HQM's recommendation, directional flushing on getting the water that is discolored out and, keeping the fresh water in. So that's basically what we've been doing so far. In the past 2 years, we've done probably about 35 valve replacements overall in town, amongst many water main breaks and other road preparation for paving. We always make sure that the valves are replaced, hydrants are in working order, so we try to prepare for a future for that. But we've been very busy in the last 2 years for trying to improve the water quality and the condition of the system. So
You feel
that's-
confident in what we're doing?
I'm very confident in what we're doing,
Good.
yes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
I know there's a hotline that's been set up for people to call in when they're having problems. What's the data on that? You said things have been getting better. Have there been less calls?
So we've actually transitioned a little bit internally on where those calls go. They're directed now down to the water department directly. Mike and I speak daily, and the calls and the emails that we were receiving in larger numbers really have fallen off. I'd say in the past 6 to 8 months, we really have gotten calls here and there, but the water department will go out, they'll assess the situation. If there's anything that seems to be outside the ordinary, they may address it, but most of them, I don't want to speak for Mike, but seem to have been related to the iron that's presented in the water.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. the iron
One good thing
condition.
to maybe start doing is let's log, so that, percentage decrease, tracking KPIs on how many we're actually getting. If we can log how many complaints or questions come in by email or phone call, we can start logging that and present data to the town.
Yes, the form is still on the website, so people, for the most part, have been using that form, which logs it, and then we're able to share it with H2M. So it's a form on the website, and it'll ask for the pertinent information, your address, your information, where you live, when have you noticed a change in either smell, taste, or just visually. But otherwise, if we get a call, we're putting that into the form as we're speaking to residents.
For me, the most important question, color is important, staining people's homes is important, staining clothes is important. Can any of you talk a little bit about the water safety itself and what people are consuming, bathing in, brushing their teeth with, and all that stuff? I know we send out our water quality report all the time, but I just like for people to hear directly from us on that quality.
Sure. So, the important thing to understand about the water quality in town is that... Microphone, please. Thank you. So sorry about that. When I go pick this up, the important thing to understand about the water quality in town is that it is consistently and predictably safe and reliable to drink. That's a fair complaint to make, and I've heard it made several times. If Council President, if you're comfortable with me getting into slightly deeper explanation, the federal and state Safe Drinking Water Acts are set up in such a way that they're composed of two different categories, broadly speaking, of contaminants. The first one is so-called primary contaminants, and they have to do with acute and chronic exposure to different forms of essentially threats to your health, where exposure to some toxin or a microbiological contaminant could predictably threaten your health. It's ironic in the sense that almost every animal, including human beings, has a tendency to measure the safety of water by its aesthetic characteristics, how it tastes, how it looks, how it smells, and it's not unfair for people to think in those terms. But the reality of it is taste and odor-causing compounds and the visualizing compounds that make water either cloudy, red, or brown are almost always characterized by what the state and federal government calls secondary contaminants. And almost always, as in the case of Waldwick's system, they have to do with the presence of dissolved metals. You're probably pretty darn familiar with that at your tap. It is incredibly and sort of challengingly characteristic of older systems, which is why, in some sense, we just went through the litany of explanation that we did, because it's easy in some sense to understand how to solve a problem like this. You can essentially replace the entire distribution system, but there's, frankly, an overwhelming cost associated with that. So we try to be surgical in our recommendations and step to the point where those, let's say, recommendations to either rehabilitate the system or replace it whole in certain very problematic places actually make sense from both an operational and monetary standpoint. So to summarize, the water is predictably safe to consume, but it is discolored in certain places, and it's valid for folks to have complaints about that. Our role and our service on your behalf is to try to stepwise find ways to solve that and make it less and less of a problem.
No, excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, you'll have an opportunity to talk in a minute. We're going to have the council talk first, and then we'll have everybody come up.
And then when you get the mic.
Yeah. So going back to the hotline complaints, are the old complaints that people made previously, have they been followed up on, and we understand if they're remediated or they are not? Because I don't know if less complaints is truly less complaints.
So those complaints as they come in are data set for H2M as they were looking at the system, part of their overall evaluation in the past year. To Pat's point, while there is potentially a visual issue or a smell or a taste issue, it's not an issue that the water department can necessarily go out and fix on the spot. It happens to be a side effect of the water and the system that we currently have. That's fair to say, Pat?
I'm sorry, I was speaking to my phone. That is correct.
So it's not like less complaints, right? It's still the same amount of complaints. It's not like it's been fixed.
if by asking, are there less complaints, there can be less of a tendency maybe for folks. They've already reported it, so they may not be reporting it again.
Yeah.
But that data is not lost. That's part of the evaluation that H2M has done in the past year.
Okay.
I also think that the less complaints also does indicate that, the flushing programs are starting to work and things like that. So, yeah, new complaints.
Right, so as we flush directionally from one side of town to the other, that's a program that Mike was just referencing, there may be times when they're flushing in your area where you may wake up one morning and you notice a big difference as they're flushing through your system. It can be something that you might notice for the 24 to 48 hours until that area is flushed. So during that time, we may get a call, and Mike and I will talk, and he'll say, they're right on that street, that's what they're noticing at the time, and by the next day, we tell them run the cold water, they do, it's clear, and then they're good to go. So I wouldn't say that those are standing issues, but just related to the program that we're running.
That's all reported, right, on the website as like where they're going to be flushing. And I'm sorry, I was trying to talk loudly because I know I don't have the mic.
Right, the borough does send out Nixle notices, and there's a standing message on the website, so people, when they log in, they can tell exactly what part of town the water department is in.
I think would probably help in tracking going forward is what I started talking about earlier. And when we have a complaint or a question, there's a status on that, remediated, open, still existing, so that we can start to report on percentages, right? So if we can go back into history, we have the log of everything that's been reported on that website. We should have water department follow up on those and say, is your issue remediated? Now you have a scoring mechanism to say, out of the 50 issues that were reported in September of 2025, 25% of them have been remediated, other 50% are still open and whatnot. So we can start to show progress with hard data to folks instead of anecdotal.
Yeah, but that's the type of data that you can get. That's exactly what I was saying, is data is really important, and that helps you with your modeling that's always changing as well. So yeah. I don't know which one of you to ask this question of, but could you speak a little bit more about the metals? People hear metals and they get freaked out. And, what metals are we talking about?
Sure, thanks. Your wells are all basically tapping bedrock. So there's the natural minerals are in there. So when we say it's metals, it's just naturally occurring compounds. But the way it's categorized is they call it metals. So it's things like aluminum, beryllium, barium, and they all have an MCL. And then the secondaries are like iron and manganese. And then those have what is a recommended like upper limit, sometimes lower limit, but mostly upper limit in New Jersey. So then that's something else that basically, if you have too high of iron, too high of manganese, then they may require treatment on that. But then to Pat's point, like those types of compounds are probably more if you're tasting or smelling, that's what it is.
I'm going to jump in. So Karen just gave a very comprehensive answer, and I'm going to be more pointed. In our study of your distribution system in particular, overwhelmingly, and by this I mean everything else essentially is a rounding error in comparison, the metals that you are likely to encounter in your drinking water are iron and manganese. And that is characteristic of almost every public water system, frankly, in New Jersey. Again, the important part for your awareness is to understand that both the federal government and the state recommend that they be regulated as secondary contaminants, that their presence in your drinking water at the concentrations that you experience, even when they discolor your tap water, have no health effect on you. It's irritating, it stains your laundry, it can stain your plumbing fixtures, and again, there's a very valid point in attempting to solve it, but you should not be worried about it from a health effect standpoint. Okay?
Now, we do have, Mike has a secretary down at the DBW. She could help out with monitoring all that stuff.
I plan to send her an email tomorrow.
You are. When she gets in the morning and she sees any complaints, she right away tells Mike. Mike's forwarded it to Tatiana. and we'll keep a log of all that stuff.
Yeah, I'll make sure that she gets us all the current stuff. So that, and again, to what Pat was saying before, the next steps would be to start like looking at specific parts of the system. Having that information then kind of helps that we factor that in, so to get the most recent information on that. And also, even though we talked about iron and manganese and that Waldwick sampling under the Safe Drinking Water Act, they meet all those requirements. So there might be certain areas, but the system as a whole is compliant with all the Safe Drinking Water Act compounds.
Okay, next question. I'm going back in my notes while you guys were talking, so I'm going to go back to the beginning. In my mind, right, when I look at this timeline, and maybe you can't comment, and then maybe it's just me looking at this. It seems to me we had that water main break in June 2024. Then our PFAS remediation kicked in. And after those two things, we saw the big spike in complaints happen. From your experience, and maybe it's just a hunch or a guess, is that related to what happened to the system, all that trauma from the water main break, which was pretty large for the town, and the PFAS changing directions of flow because we're shutting things on and turning things off and introducing the media into the system to filter things? Does that all contribute to the change that everyone saw?
I'm going to start by saying, yes, that was considered, and that was one of Mike's first thoughts also, and then working to flush out if there were pockets of that. We did look at the water chemistry before and after the PFAS, didn't see anything really significant that the addition of that treatment changed the chemistry, resulting in the changes that we saw. It did seem to be more flow velocity related from what we were able to tell. I assume you're going to say more.
Just more of the same. And so there's two different components to your question. The first one has to do with aquatic chemistry, and the other one has to do with physical behaviors of the system. So just to reaffirm what Karen said, it's our professional opinion that it really did not radically change your water chemistry, but it did change the immediate flow patterns, and downstream of that changed your priorities in terms of which wells came on and off first. And as a result of that, you very likely see different behaviors now than you did, let's say, several years ago. It is an ongoing multivariable problem to manage one of these systems. And our objective in doing this modeling is to make it more predictable so that as we iterate, as we log those complaints, and we see them occur again and again, in more predictable locations, that we drill down on them and essentially use, let's say, more intense and more effective solutions to go past the point where we're just cleaning them every so often, and eventually we get to the point where we do away with them.
So is it typical, like on a street, where you might have one resident who has really brown water and then a neighbor or across the street not have it?
It's not typical, but it occurs often enough that we consider it to be a predictable behavior. And here's what it often comes down to. It's difficult to think about the complexity that goes into building a system like this, but the system itself, and your superintendent can attest to this, is not perfectly level, nor are there drainage points everywhere in the system, which means that, let's say on a given street where the topography changes from high to low, and there are interim, let's say, low spots or bellies in the pipe, it's not only possible, but typical that sediment collects at those points, and if your particular water service is tapped at a location nearby one of those, you might experience, let's say, a higher than usual frequency or intensity of discoloration. Now, that being said, when we read and log these complaints, we're also logging that data. One of the more useful tools associated with having a hydraulic model, like has been developed now for the borough, is that we can look at that information and correlate those typical causes and say, one of the tools that we have at our disposal maybe is not necessarily water main replacement, maybe it's changing the location of this particular house's tap. A little less money pursues maybe the same outcome.
Can I ask you a question? A lot of residents are doing work on their homes. If you do work on your home, you change your pipes in your house itself. Would that have any effect of the problem with water? I know it comes from us, but.
It has the potential to, but typically that has more to do with the water quality parameters that are associated with your service piping and, of course, intuitively, the piping in your house. It's unlikely to change the behaviors down the road for the system, but it's a valid question.
I wanted to also note, I believe both of you have been part of this conversation before in logging the complaints, that one of the questions I believe we ask or we talk about is whether or not there is a whole home filtration system, and how does that potentially mask an issue that some residents have on the same street and others may not be noticing. So I know Karen has discussed that before, and it's an interesting point that you may hear us ask if you are calling to report an issue.
Yeah, and that's something that, just in general, water, doing some of the sampling, the required sampling, that's definitely one of the things. If we see a change in water chemistry or water quality or something, one of the first questions is, did they do something different in their house that's causing the change from their tap, rather than assuming it's coming from the system? So yeah, that's definitely, and yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different types of systems out there that do different things, but of course, none of that can be controlled by the water system, but that's a question that gets asked whenever we see something that changes from like a sample to a sample, where you're using customer services for certain samples, is why did that sample? One example I can give for another system we worked for is they had a specific location for total coliform, and then you also have to measure then the chlorine residual that keeps the water safe. Suddenly went to zero, the chlorine, and turned out they put a type of system in their house that took out everything. So they have to actually, they can't use that as a diagnostic for their system anymore, because that's not representative of the system because of how constrictive they went with their water treatment system. So just, again, all things that you're always thinking of at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Still have a couple more. I'm sorry. So looking at the different recommendations, you talked a little bit about pigging and then no DES pumping.
Yes.
No DES pumping, excuse me. So that's based upon the remaining thickness of the pipes, if it'll hold the higher pressure, a machine going through there to push through the material,
Right.
like a, if I was going to get my arteries cleaned out for a heart attack.
You got it.
Right, same type of thing.
Correct.
Putting a stent in and drilling through like a rotor-rooter.
Perfectly analogous.
Right.
Yep.
So how do you take the hydraulic study and turn that into, can those pipes handle it, or you have to do a sample in that area to see?
So,
Is Mike going to be digging up water pipes if you start doing this and have a water main break and pull his remaining hair out?
very valid question. In almost every circumstance where we recommend a pigging operation, we also recommend a line item that includes selective couponing and sampling of the pipe ahead of time to give you, at a nominal cost, essentially some degree of assurance that the operation can move ahead in a way that's reliable and won't result in water main breaks.
And we do that proactively with water main breaks. We are generally taking a coupon so that we have some samples of areas that we know have been affected.
It has been a very positive experience for us to interact with your system professionals, so we understand that you all have those capabilities. I mentioned it in the context of the contract itself because, in some sense, driving the system is different from having to maintain the system. So we offer it as an option or make it as a recommendation that can be included in the scope if it's useful to you.
Okay, and then just to follow up on that, you said potentially lower cost for a little bit of water quality increase. Did you really mean little bit, or is it like markedly better for that investment?
What I mean by that specifically is that it is the behavioral equivalent of brushing your teeth. It can be effective, especially if you were regular about it, but there's an opportunity cost associated with that, and it amounts to effort and money, time spent essentially making a minor disruption to municipal behaviors in a given neighborhood. And there is a benefit analysis, and it doesn't have to be too complex, that goes into saying for a given pipe, given its age and physical condition, maybe you are, in some circumstances, throwing good money at bad. And what we would recommend in situations like this is for, let's say, for argument's sake, 24 candidate locations, that we develop a simplified matrix and say, where are you investing money most correctly so that you're seeing marked, reliable water quality improvements rather than just fractional improvements, and in some sense, wasting your money.
Okay, and my last question, I promise, for now.
Okay.
So you said you're going to finish the flushing program that we're doing right now. You're going to let the system rest, go through the summer with all the usage, and then in the fall, have a recommendation for, are there specific hotspot areas for pigging or no desk or water main replacement? That's kind of your plan for the remainder of this year.
That's our objective, and if you care for me to elaborate,
I do.
it's our opinion that doing pipe work on systems of your scale and complexity is typically not the best idea during the summertime, simply because there's so much demand associated with the system, and we'd rather not disturb it during its periods of high demand, essentially intentionally introduce another risk. In addition to that, the summer would give us enough time, enough predictable time, to reliably plan out where your money is best invested. In other words, given the problems that you're experiencing right now, we would not recommend that you treat this truly as an emergent condition. Rather, it's a situation that you've experienced for a long time. It doesn't represent a true acute threat to public health. So it's something that you can afford to take the time, again, being subjective about it, this is your system, but that you can take the time to plan very sort of smoothly and then go use your resources the best you can. It's our opinion as professional engineers that sort of the best timeline for that would be to use the summer essentially for planning and use the fall going into essentially the cool weather of this year for execution.
Thank you.
And then the hydrogeologist kind of person has to jump in also. New Jersey is still under a drought warning, so that would be another reason not to go too crazy with a lot of extra water use is in the summer when you're already trying to meet demands. And that's something that we're continuing to watch, but the DEP still has not lifted the drought warning.
Anyone else? If not, we'll open up to the public. Anybody from the public? I'm sorry? Yeah, I know. Anybody from the public would like to ask Karen and Pat any questions? Just come to the microphone and give us your name, please. Come to the microphone with your name.
Okay. Oh, gotta get up. Got somebody.
How you doing? I'm Mike Goodell. I've been in contact since July of '24, and sorry. I'm just asking, what were the real samples of the water from houses? Has the DPW or your company done actual samples from people's homes, faucets, hoses, anything like that?
Some.
Yeah.
Yeah, some in the height of it, to confirm that, to confirm our thought that it's like iron manganese, exactly what was in there.
So this is all based on your model of what you have done over the last year. And so my personal thing is complaints may be down because we have complained, and then we say this is the model. We come out in fall, it goes to the summer. So I think people have complained, it hasn't gotten anywhere. I said back in October of '24, maybe 2 men go around to the certain areas and say, this is your sample, this is your sample. So are we taking full, actual real-life samples of people's homes when they complain? Or are these graphics just for people who are complaining? So like the red, I know it's the thickness of the pipes and everything. Are we actually going to the house? And I know that's impossible to do for the entire town. But for some of us, I know my house was sampled in July of '24. And you saw the discoloration back then. Have we done that to any other home in Waldwick?
Maybe one or two.
Yeah, so the From a practical standpoint, the answer is no, but there's a reason for that, and that is that most characteristically, the worst water quality samples occur in immediate flushing from the distribution system. And when you get into an individual home, the behavior of water quality tends to be a little bit erratic unless you are very disciplined about taking immediate first draw samples and putting those samples through a series of analyses as you would, let's say, comparable to the samples that we would extract from the water distribution system itself. In other words, by, let's say, largely concentrating on the distribution system and the samples that we get from flushing, we're hoping to be a little bit more rigorous and conservative, and by that we mean cover a greater area than might be characterized by individual houses. That being said, we do have the body of complaints and the logs associated with them, so that when folks call in and provide anecdotal evidence, we take that information very seriously. In other words, anyone that takes the time to make a call to a municipal agency has typically experienced, even if they can't characterize it with numbers, water that they don't consider visually acceptable. And we take that as a serious indicator that there is a problem in that particular, at least associated with that particular tap, and possibly as an indicator for the other services around it.
Mm-hmm. I'd recommend just maybe real-life samples from a hose, random times, 2 guys from the DPW, a week. You could do a lot of houses, I think. I mean, just taking, I wanted to do it on my block specifically in October of 24. I wanted to take 2 clean buckets and go to everyone's house. And I did it to my immediate area. I wanted to take my daughter's red wagon, put 2 buckets, and honestly just knock on their door and do it. I think that could be to back up all of this information in the models and everything like that. That's a big ask, I know. I know you took a coupon from Waldock Ave. What, is that a result that we'll get now or later or fall time? Is that?
There's a lot of similar to that picture.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So our recommendations are coming more in the fall time?
No, I think what we're going to do is aggregate the information that we have now, and discretion of mayor, council, and administrator, we would be happy to engage in essentially a workshop with interested citizens to talk about the outcomes that we'll get both from the additional and, let's say, intensified flushing in the spring, and where that's going to take us in terms of potential recommendations. If at that time there's an agreement that we could benefit from some additional data collection, we would be happy to include that in the data set. Not only happy, we'll intentionally make use of it. In other words, your recommendations will be taken seriously, and they'll be included before the analysis starts so that we don't end up going down some path and ignoring the information that's important essentially to the outcome of you and your neighbors.
Okay.
So from a timeline standpoint, again, so we don't walk away with something that sounds subjective or anecdotal, I would say that we're talking about essentially May, potentially June. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, is when you're going house to house, I'm going to pull this out of the floor, we need to, like, we could set up more of a, we'll call it a standard operating procedure type of thing on that sampling, because if somebody has a tap that's been off for 4 months, you're not going to get something representative in that first draw versus, flowing water, if it's off because of frost, versus frost-free. Like, there are a lot of different variables, so I think that should be thought through with Mike and his crew in the borough to make sure that we're not collecting data just for data. And look at the two of us, you know what, we love data. But realistically, we want the data to be able to be thought through and make sense and to be able to rely on it. So again, see what Mike's with the different flushing, how that works, what improvements he's seeing compared to the way they used to do it, continuing to get complaints. And obviously people sitting here, I would say, if you're like, oh yeah, I still have the problem, but I haven't reported it because why bother? I would say go ahead and report it again, where you're sitting here, you're listening, you're obviously interested, and then we get a fresh batch of you're still having an issue and what that issue is.
I think he asked about the sample. Were you able to make a comment on the sample that we took from Walton Academy?
And you're saying, make a comment specifically on the condition of the pipe coupon, right? You're not talking about a water quality sample?
That's more,
It was fairly characteristic of a highly tuberculated metallic pipe. And so what your suspicion would be that it's internally corroded, it has a lower service diameter, and essentially is a good candidate either for cleaning and lining or potentially for replacement. That's correct.
would it be wise to look at this and the lowest number, take some samples of those homes? Because have you taken samples of these red streets in real life time, or is this just theoretical, the pipe roughness? Are these correlating with complaints, and not only complaints, but actual real life samples?
So for sure, we have sampled water quality from those pipe lines. We have largely, again, to make reference back, it is most typical in situations like this that we will see more conservative, and by that I mean worse quality, sampling from the hydrant at different points in a distribution system than we would inside a house, where the low velocities give that water the potential to be quiescent, sometimes for hours, and maybe might give us a false sense of security about the water quality in those places where your understanding of the chart is correct. The pipe is the roughest, and therefore the intuition is that there's the greatest likelihood for corrosion. So we're trying to be conservative about it. It's not that we're avoiding going into houses, it's that we're trying, when we sample water, to make sure that we get good water that's actually characteristic of what's flowing in the pipes.
So roughness might not necessarily mean cloudiness, the rust, and all that kind of stuff.
But it's a fair place to start.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a
Is
good
your recommendation-
indicator.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Good.
Okay.
Sorry, I almost fell over there.
Good.
Good evening. My name is Gary Payton. I'm a 6-year resident here. This is the third municipality I've lived in within the county of Bergen. 2 of the prior ones are very similar, and this is quite different in terms of water supply. I lived in one in Monroe, New York. The village there is all based on those people who get water supply, public water, from wells. And some hills, not too many, in the village. Mawa is very similar with lots of hills. We have very few hills here. Hills, water runs quicker down pipes in hills than it does here. And I guess the highest place I've seen here is up in Wyckoff, where we have the red and the blue wells. So when you talk about cleaning and recording, first recording, do you actually record where the people live on the street, on the main street, or as we have here, because we're level and we have lots of little lakes and ponds, that we don't have elevation and we don't have high natural water flow? If you could record that information on each complaint, I think it would help you understand where the problems are. Are they on the main pipes or are they on the side streets? And I live in one in Tamaron. It's a dead end. There are a lot of dead ends here. You ride along, you see signs, no outlet. Do we know if that's where the problems are with the people's quality of water or coloration? Or is it on the main thoroughfares where you have higher speed water? Those are a couple questions for you.
Okay, I'm comfortable initiating a response to that, so I'll respond if you're comfortable with, I'll give a response to your last question,
Yeah.
which to me sort of encapsulates everything that you just described. And it is correct and true to expect that the lowest velocities in water distribution systems everywhere, not just in Waldwick, would be the lowest in dead ends. That
Right.
being said, Waldwick has intentionally made a program to eliminate dead ends where it can. Part of our analysis has characterized water quality in the dead ends that exist here, and some of our recommendations will have to do not so much necessarily with replacing just the most corroded pipe, but by eliminating those dead ends by creating looping. And therefore creating two-directional flow and giving your system operators the opportunity to more reliably flush those pipes.
Okay. Well, thanks for that answer. I just bring up my history of the other two municipalities, and we never had water problems. And I served on a council up there for many years myself, so I just bring it to you. But I think you need to very much collect the information as to whether they are on a dead end or they're on a main thoroughfare. And you'll have certainly more volume flow on a main thoroughfare than you do in dead ends. All right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, for the people who call in, one of the questions that gets added to that database is location. So we are able to then plot it where it is on the system.
Yeah.
Basically, we did have a map, difficult to read, but a lot of that was actually, the complaints were not necessarily clustered around dead ends at that time, but definitely we can like reassess and see if there's any standard or, to the point of Waldwick understanding that that is an area, as now they've moved on with a lot of other enhancements in their system, they are focusing on things like water mains and looping and trying to address that so that way they don't have that stagnation.
Yeah, I know on my street we have about 5 or 6 fire hydrants and they clean them out, but I would expect all the bad stuff to come down to the end, which is where I live, but I don't have any problem with my water, all right? And the more you know about the type of pipe it's going, not necessarily the composition of the material, but is it flowing or is it running and depositing and backing up, all right? I just would like to make a comment. We thank Mike. He's helped us with a couple water mains. He's been very, very positive. Thank you, Mike.
I think I'd like to, Mike, not every dead end has a dead end on the water pipe, right?
Say that again?
Not every dead end street
Oh,
has a dead end.
no.
So a lot of them have loops already.
Dead end and a dead end, yes.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Russ Anderson, 28 Bonner Place. Been here for 4 years. Love the town, by the way. And if this was discussed in the July meeting, I wasn't attending, so I may be asking a question that's already been answered. Given the fact that iron and manganese are endemic into our water system, is there an objective or quantifiable goal as far as the water quality is concerned, or is it just general reduction to safe standards, which it sounds like we're already there at
Sure.
safe standards?
Yes, so there are objective and quantifiable goals. The federal government sets a standard in New Jersey, the state agrees with it rather than having reduced it in any way. From a numerical standpoint, both of those regulatory agencies look for 0.3 milligrams per liter of iron as an upper limit and 0.05 milligrams per liter of manganese as an upper limit. Now, from the standpoint of the sampling of your sources, you're reliably in compliance with those numbers. The problem, essentially, in particular our focus on iron here, is that many of the older pipes in your system have either were installed this way or became this way over time. Essentially, they began to be characterized by unlined interior surfaces. So it's very easy to intuit. Corrosion, especially on the time scale of years or decades, can expose drinking water consumers to additional iron above and beyond what you would see from your sources. And so our objective in talking about everything that we've discussed here today is to try to come up with, first, inexpensive, essentially standard operating procedures that reduce that in a reliable fashion, but then when we get to the point where we identify the likelihood that those operating procedures aren't going to do any good anymore, make recommendations to either clean or replace. Okay?
And we've been talking, those are obviously, as you described, the secondary contaminants. What are the concerns regarding primary contaminants in our system? I know that it was mentioned that there was a PFAS remediation back in '24. Are there current primary contaminants in the system that you're focused on, or has that been eliminated?
So I'm going to be deferential to your licensed operator, but my understanding is that your primary concern is only PFAS in terms of primaries at this time.
Yeah, and basically the treatment that went in on every single treatment plant and source has brought that to below detection, and it continues to be monitored to make sure that it continues to be effective.
Okay.
Did you want to add? Okay.
Sums it up.
But yeah, basically, again, there's a litany of different compounds and sampling frequencies, and Waldwick follows that and stays within the regulations. And basically, again, like the PFAS treatment, it does reduce it to below detection, removing that threat from the drinking water source.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Just want to touch on, testing is done weekly in some cases, quarterly, monthly, yearly. We have an extensive testing program that Mike runs because we're required to. So it's something that's done all the time.
Yeah, and it's a combination of, basically for PFAS, for example, since we're talking about that, it makes sure that when it comes through the treatment before it goes into the system that it meets requirements, but then there's operational samples that then also can be done just to make sure that it's ahead of any changes, any maintenance that needs to be done to make sure that that continues to be meet all the safe drinking water requirements.
Well, thank you for all your contribution to the town. We all greatly appreciate it.
Anyone else?
My name is Margaret Hayter, and I live on a dead end. But I don't have water issues, but I do have a question. You said one of the remedial actions we could take would possibly be lining pipes. And you mentioned that we'd be lining with plastic. I've read studies, or I've heard about studies that have said that pipes lined, and it's PVC pipes, that it's dangerous because it releases microplastics into the water systems. And we already have enough microplastics floating around in our bodies and in our systems. So can you address that?
Absolutely. So plastic is only one of the potential lining methods that's available to a system of your scale and size. And the correct answer for someone who's analyzing materials and potential risk is that the health effects, the chronic exposure health effects of microplastics are not informed enough in the academic literature for us to express an opinion on your behalf. In other words, we would never, based on the information that we have available to us, attempt to either argue with you about the validity of that concern or attempt to allay anyone's fears. There's simply not a correct data set to deal with that. But that being said, there are several other alternative technologies in terms of material of construction that are readily available that wouldn't radically change the cost of a cleaning and lining operation if we moved ahead with it. So from a practical, like a categorical standpoint, it's still a valid option for you to move ahead. And with consent of mayor and council, we could intentionally avoid plastic as lining material altogether.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Laura Litchell. Thank you for the presentation. I have a quick question for people who are out there who have the water filtration systems. When you're flushing, and this, I guess, ties in with all of the complaints that have been voiced to the mayor and council, when you're receiving all of the notifications from the residents of all of the complaints and such, and then you're flushing, and I appreciate that you're going to follow up with them, what advice do you have for the people who have the water filtration systems? My daughter currently has one. She's supposed to change her filter every, I want to say it's every 5 months, and she's changing it every 2 months now, and the amount of sludge that's coming out of her water filtration system is astronomical to me. And she has small children. I'm concerned about the iron levels. I'm concerned about the sludge and, you know, any possible toxicity that's in the piping. So if she potentially, if her area, she's in District 4, if her area gets flushed, she should see a decrease in the amount of sludge that's in her filtration system? Or would that be true, or would she expect more? Or is anybody testing the sludge that's possibly coming out of these filtration systems to see if there's any toxic chemical, well, I don't want to say chemicals, but what's in the sludge?
Sure. So I want to make sure that we're very careful about how we state this advice, because it is really difficult, especially in a public forum, to express accurate information.
Has fallen on deaf ears, and they have children and elderly people and want clean water.
So, and again, this is why I'm going to say that we use extreme caution and, let's say, humility in making these recommendations, because I'm a drinking water consumer in my own town. We have iron in our wells. I have 3 kids. They've gone from being toddlers taking baths sometimes in red water to being teenagers who complain about it once a week themselves to me, the water engineer in town. And so I say that we recommend exercising caution in using whole house filters, or especially filtration systems with some degree of complexity, because accurately and reliably maintaining them is a job that is very difficult for individual consumers and individual homeowners. Now, I'm making no comment whatsoever on the competency or the diligence of you and your family. I'm sure that you are taking the best care of your own systems that you can, but sometimes it is very difficult to estimate whether or not those systems are retaining more, let's say, secondary aesthetic contaminants than you might otherwise be exposed to if you were willing to run, let's say, your bath tap or your kitchen sink for several seconds to several minutes before you start to make use of it. Right now, what you are doing is filtering, because as all of us do, it's natural to react to discolored water in a way that says that's not safe to use. What I'm saying is that based on every measure that we have in accordance with state and federal rules, there are no detectable primary contaminants in your drinking water, which means by association, there are none accumulating in the sediment and metal sludges, again, essentially rust, when I say metal sludges, that are accumulating in your whole house filters. Therefore, it might be, again, and this is a choice that you're going to individually make with your family, it might be more advisable to simply bypass the system and flush, tolerating the ambient concentration of those metals that occur after the flush, rather than living with the potential slugs of that sediment and or dissolved rust, essentially, that could be experienced when the filters either become saturated or small components of that particulate break off and find their way again either into your cooking water or into your cleaning water. It's, again, I acknowledge, having dealt with this problem many dozens of times, that is a dissatisfying solution to hear from a professional consultant. The greater, and again, this occurs on the time scale of months, the greater solution will be for us to look downstream to problem locations, potentially like the one that's characterized by your connection, and looking for more permanent solutions. So frankly, you do not have to operate and maintain, or feel that you have to operate and maintain, a whole house filter.
But getting back to my original question, though, I should see less sediment after a flushing
You absolutely
than
should.
before.
Yes.
Okay, and my second question is, for all the iron levels and all the numbers that you were just sharing with the public, is that relative to adults, or does that take into account children as well?
That takes into account children and immunocompromised populations, and again, not to sound repetitive, exposure to those dissolved metals, dissolved rust, essentially ferric oxide iron, has no known health effects, either acute or chronic, for any of the service populations in town. It's a pain in the butt, it stains your laundry, it stains your fixtures, and it tastes funny.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it.
Very good.
Anyone else?
Is there anyone online who would like to ask a question? Please raise your hand.
Pat, Karen, thank you very much. Mike, thank you very much for being here. And we look forward to discussing more stuff with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The report of the committees. On the mayor's report, just a couple of items. On Saturday, I attended an Eagle Scout Court of Honor ceremony. 2 brothers from Waldeck received their Eagle Scout awards for different things they did for the community. Also, on Thursday, I attended the environmental committee and also was at a presentation of flowers and different types of growth that you could do in your homes. The environmental committee chair is here. He'll probably do an in-depth report under new business. And that's all I have to report. Financial Administrative Committee, Mr. Martinello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll hold my comments for introduction for later.
Thank you very much. Fire and Police Protection Committee, Mr. Brennick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple items here in the fire department. Fire department responded to 18 calls this month for a total of 69 this year. We're in the process of doing bloodborne pathogen and right to know, which requirements. Our new ladder truck has completed the pre-construction meetings, and the replacement truck should be into our borough somewhere at the end of this year, October-ish, if you will. That's all I have for the fire department. For the police department, we're going about things a little differently this year. I'm working in conjunction with the new police chief. I've got some items to report to the public. Underneath the Detective Bureau, for example, during January and February, the Detective Bureau was active in cases of fraud, ID theft, patrol assists. They processed approximately 30 requests for Oprah in January, and actually 66 in February, so their hands are kind of full there. Under patrol activity, the patrol responded and conducted investigations where necessary for DUI, domestic violence, medical emergencies, motor vehicle crashes, juvenile incidents, a large number of motor vehicle stops for different assorted reasons. I'd like to thank the chief for getting together with myself and the borough administrator and supplying this data for us. And I hope that we're going to be able to, in the future, I hope that we're going to be able to tailor that a bit more so more information can be brought out through this days to the public. I believe that they have, you folks have a right to know what's going on in our borough. And I will supply that as much as I can. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Ms. Wingate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick update from the meeting last Monday that I attended. I gave them an update about the Girl Scouts project that we heard about a couple weeks ago, and they were very excited. They offered their help, so if, we can communicate that to the Girl Scouts if they do need any help. So I gave them their schedule, and I'll continue to update them on that project. As far as Wallback news, there's 4 new members that were onboarded as drivers. They were training the last time. And then also they reinstated the youth squad for the high school for any students that do want to be involved with Wallback. And then again, one more time, I'll just say that they're still looking for volunteer EMTs. So if you know anyone that is interested, please reach out to Wallback or myself. And then I did go to the Board of Ed meeting. Would you like me to give a quick update about that as well?
Sure, sure.
Unfortunately, the Board of Ed meeting and the Wallback meeting were the same night, so I wasn't able to finish the Board of Ed meeting. I had to run off, but a quick, from what I was able to save for, the students gave an update of all their accomplishments. There are mid-year reviews going on for staff at this time. Some college announcements have started for seniors, which is exciting, and also some staff for the Trapegan were there to give a presentation on the staff wellness program that they're doing at the school there, which is exciting. And then also a quick update for Trapegan parents and students. It's Dress Up Day on March 31st. For the school-wide book that they're reading, The Great Catnapping. So don't forget to send your kids dressed up for school. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Recreation and Health Committee, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as I mentioned last time, there is a ribbon-cutting ceremony that is going to officially open the Lions Club playground, and Tatiana, I'm going to steal your thunder. Nope. So I can actually announce a date. Tatiana and I worked very closely with everybody's schedules to make sure that people would be there. So it is going to be May 2nd in the morning, most likely 10:30 or 11. So mark your calendars. Bring your kids. We're doing it pretty much while baseball, the young ones will be down there. The 3-year-olds will be finishing up on their STARS program, and the younger one, T-ball kids, will be coming in around that time, and we want a lot of kids down there to be able to rush through that ribbon cutting and start using the playground. So, yeah. Yes, absolutely. So that's in process. Access for All is involved in helping plan this event, and yeah, we're really excited to officially open the Lions Club playground, which has been, from what I saw from the report, a lot of grants involved in being able to get that playground adapted for people of all different types of disabilities. So we're really happy about that. Other than that, I mean, I just want to wish all the spring sports good luck now that we had a couple of really warm days and we got rid of the snow. I think, you know, a lot of the fields, if they are turfed, they're probably in pretty good shape. If not, they're going to need some cleanup from the DPW. But I had a son who went through baseball for 12 years, and we never started on time because of the field conditions. But I wish all the spring sports teams best of luck this season. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Building and Grounds Committee, Ms. Ericola Drake.
Thank you. Starting with the pistol range, the project is close to completion, expecting to be operational by April 1st. The air balance testing is underway, and the new circulation system is already operational. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our Borough Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will reserve my comments for the introduction of our borough budget this evening.
Thank you. Borough Clerk.
I have no report. Thank you.
Borough Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Real quick, with the help of the planning board and the council, everything with the affordable housing for the 4th round has now been approved and submitted to the court. We're just awaiting the final consent order for the judgment of compliance and repose. We don't anticipate any issues, so that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're not going to close.
No items for close tonight.
Thank you. Consent resolutions and resolutions of the governing body.
Be it resolved that the following resolutions herewith listed by consent, having been considered by the governing body of the Borough of Waldeck, are hereby passed and approved. 2026-99, approval of consent. 2026-100, approval of minutes, regular and budget meeting, and closed session meeting of March 10, 2026. Policy votes. A. Waldeck Tennis Camp requests to use one court at Veterans Park from July 6th to August 14th, Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. B. Superstar Senate Tennis requests to rent 2 tennis courts at Veterans Park from June 2nd to August 27th on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 7 p.m. at the cost of $1,500 per court. C, Waldwick Football Club requests to hold under 12 practices Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., games Sundays, and the dates are listed and times are listed. You don't need me to read those, do you? Thank you. D, Reese Latore requests to hold a block party on October 10th from 2 to 9 p.m. with Smith Street to be closed between West Prospect Street and Bonner Place with alcoholic beverages being served. E, Waldwick Education Foundation requests to hold a townwide garage sale on April 25th and 26th. Rain date is May 2nd. And requests for those participating to waive the fee. They would like to hang a sign banner on Route 17 crosswalk, a sign banner along Route 17 by the Waldwick Sheridan Avenue exit Route 17 North. And from April 24th to April 25th, with the rain date of May 2nd, participants permitted to display garage sale signs on their property with removal by April 27th or May 3rd, as stated in their March 11th letter. Waldwick Community Alliance requests to hold the annual car show event on Sunday, June 7th from 9:30 to 3 with a rain date of June 14th, as described in their letter of March 5th. Waldo Community Alliance requests a waiver of fire inspection fees for the food service providers in connection with the WCA annual car show, June 7th, rain date June 14th. 2026-101, authorize a special closed session meeting on Tuesday, April 14th at 6 p.m. 2026-102, approval of social fare permit for the Waldwick Community Alliance annual car show. 2026-103, cancellation and refund of taxes, block 136, lot 9. 2026-104, emergency resolution to extend the 2026 temporary budget. 2026-105, approval of appropriation transfers. And 2026-106, payment of vouchers.
Do you have a motion and a second to accept? Motion by Andy, second by Joe. Anyone have a question?
Just touch on a few of them, if I can, Mr. Mayor. The first policy vote you'll see there about the Waldwick Tennis Camp request is one that we're excited about and asking have spoken to the Recreation Committee about. There's a summer tennis program that was in town several years ago, and Mr. Mark Sinclair, who ran that program at the time along with his brother, has approached the borough to discuss bringing that back. It was a successful camp. It was a nice opportunity for residents over the summer to be able to sign up their children to take tennis lessons. Right here in our very own town, for some people being able to walk to the lessons. So we're excited to be able to bring this back. Would like the council's consideration on it. Dates and times are there. They are early morning use of the tennis courts for about a 5-week period. The second policy vote regarding the tennis request is one that the borough has approved the past 2, maybe 3 years from Superstar Tennis. It is at a cost to the program that's coming in to offer lessons. And C is another request that the council has approved in the past for usage of the Veterans Park field for practices for those children who are under the age of 12, and those dates and times are specifically stated in the request that you have before you.
Anyone else? Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Brennick?
Yes.
Ms. Sarah Coladrake?
Yes.
Mr. Martinello?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Wingate?
Yes.
Okay, we have no public hearings. We have introduction of ordinances. Would the clerk kindly read ordinance number 2026-03?
Ordinance number 2026, number 03, calendar year 2026 ordinance to exceed the municipal budget cost of living allowance and to establish a cap bank pursuant to NJSA 48:4-45.14.
Motion and second is in order to pass this ordinance on first reading and that it be advertised in local legal newspapers required by law, setting a hearing 2 weeks from tonight's meeting or soon thereafter as the matter may be reached. Do I have a motion and a second? Motion by Joe, second by somebody. Courtney, anyone have a question on this? What this is that what we're doing is doing the cap bank to make sure that we're in compliance with everything. We do this every year. It's a standard procedure that we do. Anyone else? Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Brennick?
Yes.
Ms. Sarah Coladrake?
Yes.
Mr. Martinello?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Wingate?
Yes.
Okay, introduction of the 2026 budget.
Yep, absolutely. Easier to read. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening, the council is introducing the 2026 municipal budget. This presentation will follow the slides that you'll see on the projection screen, and any questions along the way can be answered by myself and Council Min Martinello as well. Go over to the first slide, Kelly. So a little background on our budget process and the timeline for this year. In October, we began our administrative preliminary budget meetings. Those meetings were intended to look at where we were ending 2025 and what that meant for the start of 2026. In November and December, as we do every year, we had department budget meetings with department heads individually. So that included the fire department, the police department, the fire prevention office, the clerk's office, the finance office, and then administrative meetings as well. And the intent of those meetings was to get a handle on where, again, we were ending the year and start to look at the adjustments and the needs for 2026. So the opportunity to look at what we needed for the following year and opportunities to cut where we might have had opportunity to do so. We knew that this was going to be a difficult year, and so the mindset as we sat through all these meetings with the department heads was to take a look at our numbers very closely. And I commend all the department heads who came to all these meetings because they all came in, they all understood the assignment, and we worked together as a team to be able to get to this point this evening. In January and February of this year, we began to prepare the draft budget. Again, not an easy process, and one that takes a lot of attention to detail administratively, and then with the Finance Committee meeting weekly to talk about what was before the council and how to move forward. In February and March, we had a firm council Finance Committee review of the budget. Before that went over to our auditor for review. When it goes over to the auditor, it comes back, and there are several different things that we look at in terms of where the budget lands and what adjustments need to be made at that point. And then we are at the budget introduction this evening, and in April there will be a public hearing and the adoption of the 2026 budget. Next slide. The proposed budget for 2026 is $17,050,999. And if you go to the next slide, in comparison to 2025, we were at $16,658,431. The dollar amount increase is $392,568 for a percent increase of 2.36%. That just gives you an idea of the comparison. So, how do we come up with an operating budget, and how do we get to that amount, and how do we cover that $17 million? We start at the top. The state aid remained firm and the same at $2.4 million. That covers 14.7% of the borough's budget. That portion of the budget, as everyone can see, is essential and crucial to the municipal budget. So we were, waiting anxiously to hear what the state was going to do and if any of that would be cut or not. Of course, we would always be happy for an increase, but we were happy to say that at least we didn't lose any of the state aid. Going over to the right, the revenue fees collected came in at about $1.9 million, making up 11.4% of the operating budget. And then on your left, the taxes, $10,366,000, and that's the largest portion that covers the operating budget at 60.7%. And then at the bottom, the fund balance. So what is left is the lever that allows us to balance that budget. And so this year's budget will be utilizing $2,250,000, and that'll cover about 13.2% of the operating budget total. A little more detail on the history of our fund balance. I know the Finance Committee has touched on this at prior meetings, and you can see there the different amounts that we were at the different points in time going back to 2021 and where we are, or where we landed in 2025. So we have a fund balance of $5.4 million at the end of 2025, and then on the previous page, you can do the math, but we're using another $2.250 million for 2026, and that'll get us further down in our fund balance.
And Tatiana, I'd just like to add there, so if people are just doing math, taking 2.2, and you would say, okay, I have 5.4, I'm going to take 2.2 off that, that's my new number. Not really, right? We talked about the last few meetings. Some portion of that gets put back into your surplus when you either don't use things or you have other excess revenues that are generated. So last year, we burned rate around $900,000 from that surplus balance. So if we continue that trend, then you kind of get an idea of where we would be in 2027 at that point. And also for folks doing math, right, on the slide before that, just step back one slide, Kelly. This portion, this 10 million that we're talking about taxes collected is the municipal portion, right, that we're talking about for our operating budget. Your whole tax bill is a larger piece of that goes to other destinations, Board of Education, county. So this is our municipal portion of that. So that'll be a little more obvious in another slide that we're going to see in a couple minutes here.
Yes, to your point, what we're discussing here this evening is the municipal budget, not related to the county's budget or the Board of Education budget.
Also, just to clarify for anyone that doesn't know, fund balance and surplus are being used interchangeably a little bit. Like it's called fund balance, but Councilman Martinello said surplus, which is the same thing for those of you that don't know. Which I didn't know before joining council, so I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. The next slide will tell you the history of our fund balance, and so the amount that we used each year. Again, to Councilman Martinello's point, in 2021, where we're just under $2 million, where we're ending in 25 is $2.25 million. You'll see that there is a decrease in the usage of the surplus from 25 to 26, and you'll see at the end what what that means for the overall rate. But in the preparation of this budget, that was something that was discussed and considered, and an opportunity to reduce the usage of the fund balance that we were using to balance the budget.
Yeah, and just to add to that further, many towns in the area have surpluses. Some towns have no more surplus, right? So we do have a surplus to continue to use for at least the short term at this burn rate. But this is the first time that the auditor is signaling that we have to make sure we're looking at this a little closer in terms of our expected usage, which is why we also took a slight attempt at using a little bit less surplus in this budget for this year, but there has to be offset to that, which you'll see shortly.
Next slide. Important to note some of the major appropriation increases that we see from last year to this year. Much of what we deal with here on a municipal budget level can be comparable to what residents are dealing with, in balancing their own finances at home and increased, costs of the bills that they're paying. We also feel those increases. So essentially what you see here is, in most cases, these are the bills, these are the ones that we're paying that we really have very little option to negotiate or to decrease or to choose not to pay. These are just, required costs of doing business for the municipality. The highest number at the top you'll see there is our police department salary and wages. We'll note that we are currently in contract negotiations with the PBA. But we're looking at a budget increase of $336,000 to that line. Our employee group health insurance, same thing that we know many residents are dealing with. That increase for the borough is $226,000. We had a rough winter, and that snow removal line definitely needed to be increased after the few large storms that we had. So we see just right from the top a $50,000 increase from last year to this year to be able to pay those bills associated with those storms, and then leaving enough for any potential early snow that we might get in the fall or early winter of 2026. Our DPW salary and wages are also set by contract, and so that increase is $39,000 from last year. Our legal costs went up $38,000. Collectively, some of our utilities went up $35,000. Our recycling contract is set by contract, $30,000 increase from last year to this year. Social Security, $27,000. Our solid waste collection also set by our contract at $18,000, and then our general liability insurance saw an increase of $18,000. So we are looking at a total of $817,000 in budget increase from last year to this year in those lines specifically.
Yeah, so then those doing math, you'll say, well, first page, you said there was an increase of $392,000 for your budget for this year, which is 2.3%. Well, these are the lines that went up. There are other lines that go down, right? So we do the math. We're only showing you a snippet here of the major cost drivers of what the budget increase is. There are other lines that we reduce in the other direction to offset some of these.
We did have some decreases that came our way, but not necessarily to balance all the increases that we had. And so when we went in to look at the budget department by department, that's where a lot of our decreases come into play, so that we can try to keep that number as flat as possible. Next slide will just help you visually take a look at what the tax breakdown is for a resident here in Waldwick, using the 2025 average numbers. We don't have the county numbers yet, so we went ahead and just gave you an analysis on what 25 looked like. At the time, your overall bill was divided by 20%, your municipal tax, 11% Bergen County, and then 69% for the Waldwick School District. And so on an average assessed home, which is $565,000 in 2025, that went up to $567,000 in 26, slight increase. An average tax bill of $12,967 was split, Bergen County getting about $1,400 of that, the Waldwick School District getting about just right under $9,000, and then the municipal budget, which includes the library cost to the municipal budget at $2,500. And that dollar bill there just kind of gives you an idea of how your dollars are split when it comes to paying those taxes. Next slide. So our 2026 budget summary looks like this. We're at about that $17 million budget introduced amount. The increase from last year, which we stated earlier, is $392,568. The assessed value of your homes went up to $567,000. And so in order to be compliant with the cap, the appropriation cap, there are different levers and different buckets that we put these numbers into, but we need to be compliant on our appropriations cap. We are compliant with our appropriations cap. We wouldn't be able to present this evening if we weren't. And so once we become compliant, the tax increase to the average assessed home is going to be $232.47 for the year, and that breaks out to be about $19.37 a month. Going over to the water department, our budget stayed relatively flat. We did have the same cost increases across the board that we have on the operating budget. We feel those also on the water budget. And so to that point, you'll see an increase of about $186,000 from the previous year. And that is, again, looking at the budget from last year and made cuts where we can, so that we feel comfortable enough that we can operate the water utility, but without a major increase. Any point that you'd like to make on the water?
No.
Okay. So that is the introduction of the budget. We will have the public hearing, like I said, at the next meeting. There will be, if council has any questions now or any comments?
If you want, the public hearing will be Tuesday, April 28th.
Right, Tuesday, April 28th will be the public hearing on the budget.
The council can ask questions. Sure.
Comments, questions?
Come from the council.
Okay, I'd like to go. So first, I want to acknowledge that Joe was dealt a very difficult hand this year with the budget concerns, and he's been raising this issue for years, along with myself and Councilman Ritchie. I also appreciate the thorough process that everyone went through to get this budget presented. That said, the outcome of this budget is not acceptable to me. This is just not a 10% tax increase. It's about the fact that we have taken no meaningful steps to prevent similar increases in the years ahead. To me, that's not sustainable. So for that reason, I'll be voting no on this budget, and we'll do the same for any future budget until we begin to actively address the underlying issues. I believe we should be setting clear appropriation caps, forming a redevelopment committee along with a formal resolution to support those efforts, finding ways to bring in non-tax revenue, and working with our auditor to bring transparency and a firm timeline to decisions around the water utility budget. To me, we can't keep covering rising costs on the backs of the average taxpayer. It's not responsible, and our residents deserve a long-term plan, not repeated short-term fixes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good, Joe.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment on that, right? So I think we said at the last meeting, it's not sustainable to have continual 9-10% tax increases, for sure. I think at the last council meeting, I said to the entire council, I think we need to all be in agreement to look at additional ways of bringing in new revenue. One step was taken last year in approving the redevelopment plan on Harrison Avenue. There are steps that need to happen before that construction can begin. Our legal counsel, our planning board, our buildings inspectors are working with the developers to start that project, but that's going to take time before we actually see dollars come into the town. And I think we, council members, also have to look at what other plans are coming in. I think we're all very picky about what we approve. We already rejected at least one plan on another property down near the train station. And I think that we also have given our feedback to the planner on what we want to see at that next property. And I think once the planner comes back, we do need to be aggressive in going after what else we can do, because it's not going to be a quick fix. We're not going to get dollars into the municipal budget next year. It just doesn't happen that quickly. So I do think speaking for everyone on the council, that we are in agreement that we need to look for those ways to do it. We need to do it responsibly, sure, but we do have to commit to new sources of revenue, including redevelopment, including looking at what I said last time when we were here. I want to have a timeline on the potential use of our asset, the water system, as a source. Is that the right answer? I don't know, because we don't have all the answers yet on the financial analysis. So we need to hold our partners that we hired accountable to deliver those resources to us, and from what's Phoenix. So I'm really interested in seeing those numbers and what we can potentially utilize our asset for there. And I think, at least speaking for myself and other members of the council, we are committed to looking at other sources of revenue. Unfortunately, this year, I am unwilling to sacrifice $19 a month for the public safety in terms of services, in terms of what we do provide for our residents. So that's why I'm supporting that increase for this year. I don't do that easily. And we look at every line on this budget, and I think I said a couple meetings ago, when you look at the hard costs that are in that number of $17 million, things like salary and wages, things like health insurance, which are passed to us from the state, from the government there, we basically run the town on $2 to $3 million on everything else. Our employees need to be paid, services need to be rendered to all of you to keep you safe, and those are things that we do very seriously. So I'm in agreement with Councilwoman Sarapola on taking aggressive matters to bring in new redevelopment. We have to do it responsibly, and we have to do it the right way. And everybody who is doing development in our town has to follow all the rules and has to do it according to all of the guidelines that the administrator puts out.
Anyone else?
I'd like to echo exactly what Joe just said. there's difficult decisions. He's been preparing everybody who's been listening in for the last 6 months since I've been sitting on this dais, that there were going to be difficult decisions that were going to have to be made. I want to also echo what Andy said at the working session we had on Saturday, that this is a patch. This is not a 10% increase every year for the next 6 years, because that probably would be illegal, as what Joe was saying, right? So this is a temporary patch. It's also to the 20% of the municipal budget, which is what we were just showing. It's not a 10% increase across the board for the taxes that you're paying. So I support this increase.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Sure.
may, I also agree with everything that's been said here, folks. I don't like to raise taxes. I live here too. But the bottom line is that we have to make that number in order for this borough to run. I also agree that we need to look down the road. And for that reason, I say we don't have a choice in the matter. We have to look down the road, because if we don't, we're going to run out of money sooner rather than later. We have to do that. It's incumbent upon us to do that, to look for different ways, not just additional sources of revenue, but the way I figured it is, you find additional sources of revenue, or you cut your expenses, or a combination of both. Excuse me. But something certainly does have to be done so that there's a policy and a procedure in place down the road that will prevent us from getting in the situation that we're in again. It'll never happen again. How do you do it? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know. But at least I'm willing to look and find a way. Thank you.
I don't think nobody likes to have their taxes raised, and I think everybody here is in the same situation, that something has to be done now, and we have to do it right away. I talked about this with the administrator. I mean, there's other ways to cut, but then again, we'll have to cut people's salaries, jobs. And to cut people's jobs is not what Walden tries to do. We try to not do that at all. So this year, there will be an increase, and hopefully next year we don't have to have an increase. We should be able to come up with ideas to bring more revenue into the town. A lot of people are saying some of us do not like redevelopment. That's not true. We like redevelopment as long as it's for the betterment of our community and our residents. And I think moving forward, as everyone's been saying, we have to keep an eye on redevelopment, make sure it fits Waldwick and not fits somebody else's pocket. So that's what it is right now, and we'll have to just move forward and work with everybody with getting everything changed. In regards to setting up all these committees and everything that I keep on hearing that I don't do, or I don't do this, or I put someone on it that doesn't want to be on it, or someone's on it that they should not be on it. Our administrator is the one that sets up the committee for me. And when she's ready to tell people about committees, she will let everyone know. But I look at it this way. People are always saying that the mayor and council have to be very transparent. We have to be transparent, and I think we are. My feeling is any committee that's being set up moving forward is not made up of 3 people so that we don't have a quorum. It's going to be made up of all 6 of us, and myself, which would be 7. And there will be a meeting in which the public comes to, because the interest is the public. The public will come to our meetings, even if we have to have meetings on a Saturday or an extra meeting here or there to bring up a topic. The residents should be able to be here to voice their opinion. So if you think you're going to have a meeting with 3 council people, I don't think you're going to have that. You're going to have it with the whole council, because we're all in this together.
The other thing we need to look at too, and I've already talked to Administrator about this as well, any new contract that comes up, garbage, whatever it is, we need to look at with an open mind. An open mind meaning, do we look at other shared services? Do we look at reduction of certain things? Do we look at caps on certain services to reduce costs? Every contract that comes in here that's not salary, wages, and health related, we have to look at in a go-forward manner. And guess what? Every community around us is going through the same process. So we do have similarities with other towns. What we don't have is some of the ratables that a lot of other communities around here have. We don't have Paramus, we don't have Mawa, we don't have those complexes where we get extra tax revenue. That's not the way Waldwick is built and designed.
Since we're all here, as the mayor just proposed, I think that we should be meeting regularly to discuss the budget issues moving forward. I understand that at this point, we can't change it for next year, but it needs to start now for the future.
Absolutely.
I agree.
And it
Yes,
will.
I agree.
It will. We're all in this together.
I don't think there's any disagreement on that.
So let's get the next meeting scheduled.
Absolutely.
I just want to echo as well that Councilwoman Smith and I went to trainings down near Trenton, and this is happening all over the state. So it's definitely not unique to our town. And while we don't want to have to raise taxes, you know, going forward, as everyone said, that we're going to look at different ways to bring in revenue. And we all support smart redevelopment, and none of us can snap our fingers and make that happen for this year. So unfortunately, this tax increase, and I just want to thank the administration and Mr. Martinello for doing this budget, looking at it really closely. It was very time consuming, and so we do appreciate it, and you've looked at everywhere to cut expenses, and so I do support this increase for this year. But again, I do support the redevelopment and other ways to bring in revenue.
Yeah, and I think you also have to remember that we're also listening to the residents. And just last year, we added 2 additional SLEOs to cover safety at our schools. That doesn't come for free, right? That has to come from the budget somewhere. So we're listening to our residents. You want additional traffic safety. Our police officers are fantastic in this town. They do a great job of keeping us safe. We want them to be out there in the public and doing traffic and doing everything else. We have to give them the resources and the technology they need. So that comes at a cost. Our DPW does a fantastic job. We do a lot more in-house than a lot of our neighboring towns. So that means we need more people. Maybe some people don't think we have enough people to plow snow in during a 1.5-foot blizzard. But I think they do an admirable job with the staff that we have and the amount of work that we ask them to do. So without that budget dollars, we can't provide those services to you, and we have to look at other ways. So yeah, it's a tough situation to get through. So
Even the Mayor's Association has been talking about shared services with other towns, and I've been speaking to the administrator about it also, that there's a couple of towns that approached me and said to me, maybe we should look into garbage, we should look into this, we look into that. Unfortunately, right now, we can't do anything with our garbage because we have a contract. So once the contracts are up, like you said, we can start looking at other ways to save money and keep the money in our pockets. Anyone else? Motion and a second, Ms. Kelly?
Need a motion and a second for...
A motion and a second is in order to pass this ordinance on first reading?
It's just a resolution.
I'm sorry, the resolution. Motion and a second. Motion by Joe, second by Andy. Clerk, take the roll.
Mr. Brannick?
Yeah.
Ms. Sarah Drake?
No.
Mr. Martinello?
yes,
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Wingate?
Yes.
Okay. Under unfinished business, anybody from the council have any unfinished business? I'm sorry? Sure. Getting busy.
Sure.
Anybody from the council have any unfinished business? Nope. Any new business? Yes, sir.
just one item. I'd like to thank the Walvick High School baseball team. Some members of the team came down last Saturday to help me put up the nets down at Borough Park for the baseball season. Those boys played on those fields, and now they get to help to maintain them. So Chief Seifert and I were down there directing traffic, telling them where to go, how to climb a ladder, how to put carabiners on wires. It's a good community service for them. I thank them for their help. It saved the volunteers a lot of time this past weekend when they did their field cleanup. So thank you to the Walvick High School baseball team for coming out to help us last week.
And if you notice, on the right-hand side of the room, we have some posters there that's given to us by Crescent School students. They gave it to the police department, fire department, and to us. And we have it here to thank and We have the Board of Ed president here. Would you thank them for us?
Sure.
We appreciate everything that they do for us, and it's nice to be told that we're liked. Anyone else? If not, we have it open up to the public. Anybody from the public would like to comment, please come to the microphone, state your name only, please.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Jim Sheehy. Ms. Sarah Codrake asked me to come tonight to follow up with some questions about the Waldo Robotics Club.
Thanks, Jim. So I put out an email to everyone. I'm sure you all saw it, as I've been talking with a bunch of you about the issue of getting them a space, a permanent home for the Waldo Robotics Club. So they came to the last council meeting. It's a fantastic program that I think we should be encouraging as the borough. And I believe Jim answered a lot of our questions. So I think Councilwoman Smith, you were asking about 501c3, so they have that status already. And just want to put it out there that we can all discuss this as, you know, we give the grad ball, the DPW building, we give the baseball and softball fields to that association, tennis courts. I feel that it would be beneficial for our borough to help this team out and, you know, open it up to as many residents as possible. So hopefully we can ask Jim any questions and see if we can help them with the new space that Kelly and Tatiana cleaned out at the Borough Hall.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to reiterate, we are completely nonprofit, 501c3. No one's making any money. Everybody's a volunteer. And another point that I didn't want glossed over last time I was here is, regardless of whether we get a space or not, the club will survive and exist and thrive in a small form. Like my son will have a club, and Coach Christina and Coach Mike and Jen, their kids will have a club. What we're trying to do when we're coming here and asking for a space, it's to grow it and expand it to all the kids in town, as many kids as possible. So I'm not here for me, I'm here for the town, really.
Yeah, I think of it like the swim team that we have at the Walden Pool, right? Like, why can't we give them a space and say it's the Walden Robotics team? They're not asking for money, they're just asking for a space that we already have.
So, just to be clear, you do have a space, you have two spaces that you're currently using for the meetings.
Yep.
And you've been using the one here already, right?
Right, so we have spaces on a limited basis.
Weekly.
Yeah, no, and I want to be clear, we appreciate everything the town's done. And like I said, in the current form, we can continue as a small group with these families and, you know, a few other families. What we're looking for is a space we can have access to on a regular basis, daily basis, and so we can open this up to hundreds of kids instead of 50 kids. So.
We don't have, where are we putting, I'm not sure I understand what the request is for where we're putting them.
We can't let them use that space that we have at the
They
Borough
are
Hall.
using it.
They are using it.
They've been
They
in
want
there.
a permanent home, right? Just like
Okay.
the baseball
So
association has a
I think
permanent
that
home.
first we need to understand that on Mondays, there's court. No one can be in this building, particularly children, while court is in session. So that's on Mondays. Tuesdays, we have council meetings. We can't have kids here while we're conducting business. Wednesdays, planning, and then alternately zoning board meetings. So that's why Thursday and Friday were perfect for, and at the time, you were very happy about that. And so we're kind of taken aback that you are not now happy.
No, I appreciate everything.
And to boot, I just would like to add this.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to be in the room at the top of the stairs, yet I'm finding Legos in this room. And that's kind of a problem because this room is off limits.
No, we haven't had a Lego session yet. We've been here twice.
Okay.
I mean, these, I don't know what to say. We haven't even had a Lego session here. I'm sorry. We appreciate everything. This isn't about me or my son. This is about expanding this for the town. So I don't want this to go the wrong way here. I apologize. Really?
I think it did.
Really?
Wouldn't even know you were coming.
I sent out an email, Mayor, to everyone.
I'm sorry?
I sent out an email to everyone.
Right, and we couldn't respond to you because we were told by the attorney you broke some, well.
What does that have to do with me making public comments, sir?
I'll take back what I said.
Get back to, because I talked to you a
Yeah.
little bit about the schools.
Mhm.
so, and I was thinking, or I wanted to ask you,
Yep.
can you just clarify, have you gone to the schools, or what's the situation with having it as a school program?
Yeah, so I've talked to the schools, I've talked to various members of the school board, and there's not really a space that can be used on a regular basis, unfortunately. Yeah. And I think one of the beautiful parts about our club is that the parents are willing to do this for hours, multiple days a week. And not that, teachers don't want to do that, but they can't. They can't give up that amount of time. And we have parent volunteers that are willing to do that. And they're just looking for a space. And I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I have no idea that I offended you by coming.
No, I apologize to you.
But we're just trying to see if there's a space. That's all. And I'm sorry, I appreciate the twice a week here. We're just looking to see if there's something else so we could expand it.
She should know to put it on the agenda. She has never done this.
So I just think
It's
that
a public comment, guys.
Yeah, it's,
Sponsored by you.
I would just say this.
Sponsored how?
I like
Good,
the
good,
idea
Ian.
that we're trying to get this club established and growing,
yep,
okay? And I understand all of the good things that you're trying to do, and I support that.
thank you.
The problem that I have is that I don't know where to put you with a lock and key that's just yours for a 1,500 to 3,000 square foot, as you suggested at the last time we met. Building, a room, I just don't know where that is.
If I may comment on that, that was the ambitious plan in the future for that type of space. The space over here, I'm not sure what the square footage is, but that's perfectly sufficient for what we're doing at the moment, if we had access
So I
to
think
it.
what I'm trying to say to you, I think, is that we are trying to help you
Thank you.
as town, but we have to help you within the confines of what we have to offer.
Understood.
And that's all I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
I do appreciate everything that you're trying to do to help children better understand technology. I love technology.
Yeah.
I'm old as hell, but I love technology. That's
No,
my point.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Is it Tim? Tim, do I get it?
Jim.
Jim.
Yeah.
You guys are a 501c3.
Yes,
Have
ma'am.
you tried fundraising?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, because that could be a possible source of revenue to be able to get a space.
Absolutely. Fundraising is difficult. We've had a handful of events, and we have raised money. That's helped us to buy equipment. But spaces around here are expensive. So again, at this point, the options are really we stay as we are, which is fine, and my child and their kids are fine, or we raise the rates of running the club to astronomical levels, and it's going to put us in a situation where a lot of kids can't do it that might want to do it. Or the third row, third path is, well, that's why I'm here. Maybe there's a space that we could use more regularly.
We definitely want to give you a space.
Yeah.
There just is not the space available at this time.
Understood.
And I've only been on the council for a few months, so
Yeah.
it's just my general understanding at this time. We all would love to give you a space.
Understood.
But we just might need more time. and
Thank you.
just working
I did reach out after your last meeting to the United Methodist Church, and they said, I think they spoke with you already, you went there?
Yeah,
They
they,
had something, but there was a fee involved with this, which, I mean, I can't control that, I can't tell them you can't charge them.
no, I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And just for the record, we have never set foot in here with the kids, so, and we haven't had a Lego meeting here. We've had a robotics meeting, but there were no Lego pieces involved, so there was some stray Lego from somebody else. Sometimes they just show up, right? Yeah. So, thanks.
I just want to add on, I co-founded the club with Jim when he said, hey, let's go check this thing out in Jersey City. I got some kids. I said I had a minivan. I said, let's go and do it, and it's awesome. And the kids, their faces light up and everything is awesome. I just wanted to mention, answer a couple of questions to make it clear. We have absolutely thrived on the support of the town already. The ambulance building was a great start for us, but we learned from having one of our teams, I think you may have heard from the last session, one of our teams made it to state championships. During that process, we learned that we were doing a lot of things poorly at the ambulance building, having to take everything down and then take it back out again. We were losing a lot of time, so a lot of time the kids could be learning or doing stuff was just spent putting up all of the mats and the challenge pieces and then taking it all back down again. And so we basically just moved that one team into a parent's house, and we got so much more done by just having a field that was set up and we didn't have to take down every time. So that's really what it is. It's not about that we haven't had space, it's that we haven't had that kind of space where we can just leave things set up. And I think when we were originally talking about the space here, we were going to work with the days of restriction, but we were told we couldn't leave things. We thought we could leave things, and then later we were told we couldn't. So that's really the issue. If we could have a space, it doesn't even have to be all 7 days a week. We will work with whatever you can give us. If there's simply one of these spaces where we can leave the things in place so the kids can just come, start working on the projects, start diving into the coding and the problem solving, that would really do a lot. If not, frankly, the club is going to die when Jim and my kids graduate. And that's it. Because if we don't get something going that's on a town basis, the parents that are here will either move to another town that already has support for this kind of thing, and I can throw a rock and hit a town that supports this project, and this one hasn't so far, other than the limited way so far, or we're just going to give up at a certain point, because it's a lot to do as parents we're not getting paid anything, we're spending a lot of our time, and we have a lot of parents that know coding and are volunteering. If I put a price tag on the volunteering that this club generates, you'd have to have a big line item in the budget for that. So I just wanted to make that clear in case it was unsure why we were asking for, what kind of space we were asking for.
Yeah, a follow-up to that, right? So 99% of our organizations in the town are volunteer-based.
Right.
Baseball, football, soccer,
Right.
whatever. All of those are run, basketball, wrestling, football. They're all run by volunteers. They're all run by raising dollars to spend on facilities. Baseball has an enormous P&L for maintaining the facility down there in terms of electricity, water, maintenance of fields, paying for landscaping, all those things which the town does not support. So I don't know if you know that or anybody else knows that, right? So other programs do the same, and they have to pay for field usage at the Board of Education. That doesn't come for free. So basically 0 programs in the town get anything for free. So
And we're willing to pay an amount for the space.
Who thought that there were certain programs getting a free ride? Nobody gets a free ride because everything costs money. Just so I understand a little bit better, the requirements for a facility for the program, which by the way, I do support and I love, and I think Waldwick having a great STEM program would be awesome. I think it should be closer aligned to the schools personally. That's my personal belief. I heard from last time, sounds like you guys think you can do it better than what the school can do, and maybe that's part of it. I personally think it should be more aligned to the school program. That's my personal view. From a building perspective, I assume you need heat so that in the winter you can be there. I assume you need Wi-Fi. I assume you need tables. I assume you need electricity. I assume you need running water. I assume you need bathrooms for kids to go to. and all those
Heat,
things.
bathroom, and electricity. If we don't have the other things, we'll make do.
Right, so I can't put you on a baseball field and say, go do electronics.
Correct.
I can't even put you in the baseball snack stand because there's no heat and there's no bathrooms in the wintertime. So just looking at the facilities that we have available to us, I don't know where that comes in. If I put you at the garage at DPW, I don't think we have running water and bathrooms in the wintertime. So I don't know where that building is. So
I mean, the
that's my-
space
that's
that
my
we have
thought.
here that we can use on Thursdays and Fridays, if we can leave stuff in it, that we can make it work. We would do the best we could
So
to make it
I don't
work.
know, is that an option, Tatiana, Kelly? Could they leave things set up and be restricted to Thursday and Friday and maybe Saturday?
So the issue with the ambulance corps and leaving things there is that we have seniors there multiple times a week doing their programs, and the coexistence of the two of them in that room did become a concern because there were Legos that were being left on the floor, and we have seniors doing aerobics, and as you can understand, we want the safety of both groups, to be kept in mind. And the room up here was a project that we thought would help supplement so additional days, which we offered, Thursday and Fridays. But it's a space, we ourselves as a borough, as administration, are limited on where we can hold meetings. And there are other groups and organizations that ask us for meeting spaces. We have committees through the borough that are restricted to meeting here in this council space, which isn't really a great space for them to meet. And so the idea was that that room could become another equivalent to what we had at the ambulance corps. And so it's difficult to say that if we have tables and chairs set up for other groups to be able to use that room, and they're full of the robotic club, projects, that it becomes difficult to then offer that space, and we have a need for it. I'm not saying that there's a hypothetical need. I'm saying there's a need for meeting space and for meeting rooms. And this is a working administration office every day. We do have, we put on webinars and meetings for our our employees. So there is other potential for other groups to use the room. And we thought those. I think you have 3 days in the ambulance corps. You have 2 days here. That was, to Kelly's point, why we're taking it back. While we can't tell you that here's a key to a space that's permanently yours 24/7, we feel that we've offered as much and even above what we've offered Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts in their meeting requests as well. So, it's a balancing act. We have to be fair and available to all the residents who need that space. And I'm sorry that's not the answer, if that's what the council's looking for, but I just, we don't have a space that's carved out for 24/7 use by the robotics club at this time.
Right, and to that extent, if there was a space, to the council president's point, that was maybe a little rough around the edges, but had some of the basic needs in place, the club themselves would be happy to spend time and money and resources to refurbish the space to make it what we need it to be. We just need a place that we can make our own, and if it's 1,000 square feet in the back of a DPW storage, but it has heat, then we'll make do. Like, this is a scrappy team, and we'll do what we can. The point that why Jim and I are here is our kids have what they need. They're getting the education that they deserve. I want to make sure the other kids in this town are getting the education they deserve, and that's coming to a certain extent to other people's points that should be coming from the schools. I agree with that. That's a different meeting on a different day that I will attend at some point to make that point. But as far as the club is concerned, we had 40 kids last year with 10 coaches, and the only way that happens, you're not going to get 10 teachers that all have to get a stipend in a school to run the club. Like, it's just, you just can't. You imagine trying to do baseball and with just teachers. Like, you'd have a very hard time fielding enough people to put that up. So while I would love to work more closely with the school system, I know they have their own restrictions on school spaces and needing to have staff and faculty, tied into that, and how many different background checks or other things we have to do for parents to get access to those spaces. So as for the moment, with the number of kids that we have, and I think we can still handle a little bit more of who we have, we want to keep it as a club. If there's no other questions, I just want to thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Jennifer DeValue. I am Mike McMahon's wife. I am a coach with the Lego Club. My 3 kids are in it, and I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding what we mean by make it our own. So if I may just paint a word picture for you, right? We need these massive tables to be running these bots on, and we have been pulling them up and down the stairs of the ambulance building, right? And so I think, like, at its most basic, we need a stable space to hold these giant tables. And that's the very basics. That is like, would it be great to make it look like some superhero HQ for the kids and decorate it? Yeah, sure, but like, that is the really very basics. That is needed. I also wanted to give a little bit of context. So our season runs from around August until, depending on how far a team goes, kind of the winter. Now, we've never made it to Worlds, so I don't know what that looks like. But we ended before the winter last year. And something else that we have been working on sort of under the hood, so to speak, as we build this car as we go, is the offering of after-school support and other programs that kids who might not necessarily be interested in Legos or robotics can really find valuable and can be supported by in our community. And not just that, this is one of the best ways to introduce kids to tech, because part of it is it's not just Legos, it's not just robots, it's not just coding. It is history, it is looking to the future for science, it is problem solving, it is public speaking, and it is teamwork. And so I think I never like walking away from a meeting without sort of a constructive way to move forwards. And I think the first step is just knowing that we have the support of the council and that we have an open relationship to converse, and that we have the banners that the school makes for the police, or we have the being mentioned that we as volunteers came and we saw, we conquered, we, helped the grad project reorganize all their stuff. And that is really, forget the bells and whistles, because that's what we come with, that's what we know how to do. That's what we're asking for. And on top of what Mr. McMahon was saying about the relationship between the school and the club, we've been working at this for 2 to 3 years. With basically, it's, I don't want to take up too much more time because I know it is the evening and my ADHD meds are wearing off. Basically, we know how these companies that run this like to run it. That is what we offer. And so even if it does wind up merging with the schools after my kids have graduated from high school, that is what Mike and Jim and Christina and I and all the other coaches have. That is why the school can't just kind of pick it up and run with it, is literally we have the relationship already. We have all of the paperwork filled out. We have all of the administration done. So I just hope that is a piece of enlightenment. Not necessarily a brag. Maybe it's a humble brag, because I'm pretty sure that my husband did most of the paperwork with Jim and another lawyer friend of ours. But that's about it. If there are no questions, I will go take myself away from this microphone. Okay, so I know I'm a fast talker. Also, I'm from Paramus, so I felt a little bit called out. But
You're fine. You're fine. Anyone else from public?
Mary Mulvaney, whose microphone is way too high. Just wanted to ask if, it's more of a suggestion, that today on ABC News, Channel 7, there was a lot of talk on the news about car thefts in Bergen County, but they highlighted Waldwick, New Jersey, which sort of perked my ear, because I live here. And I do know someone who was one of the people affected by that, by a car theft rather recently. And I just wanted to say that I think if it's hit the news on ABC, it might be good if perhaps something comes out from the town, so that there's no fear or no, craziness or no crazy thoughts that go on, that everybody's car is going to get ripped off, because that was not what the point was at all.
We'll reach out to the police chief and see if he...
Yeah, I think maybe something that could go out on one of those many computer things that you do. Yeah.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Anyone else? If not, do I have... Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't see you.
Sorry.
Laura Litchell. I usually watch the council meetings at home because I'll get a good workout in or what have you. But there was something that was said at the previous meeting that really bothers me, and I really wanted to bring it to your attention. The Bergen County Utility Authority and the smell that we're about to embark on in the summer months, that I feel that even though we've been smelling it for 50 years, doesn't mean it's acceptable today. And I'm just curious as to the shared services agreement that we have with the Bergen County Utilities Authority, if we have any air studies as a part of the contract. I do believe that the VOCs, the hydrogen, the ammonia, and the grit stations, really, I think that we deserve, the people deserve an answer. I guess we deserve an answer because we've been smelling this for 50 years, and I, for one, think that it shouldn't be going into the 51st year. And I truly feel that the mayor and council hears about this frequently. It's all over Waldwick United. Everybody talks about it. And for us to have to call the Bergen County Utilities Authority, you guys represent us. You guys have a contract with them. And we, the little guy, are going to lodge all of our complaints with the utility authority. But where are you guys in all of this? Similar to where we're taking complaints for all the water, is there something that we can do, whether it's the Environmental Commission, the Board of Health, to involve them to champion getting the smell under control in the summertime? Because I don't buy 50 years of smelling it. It's getting worse. Oakland was recently added as a town. And with all the increased development and housing that's going up, it's going to increase the volume, which is going to increase the odor. And we're in March now, and in the summertime, I pray for a windy day for it to quiet it down. So, and I live on Smithfield Terrace, and it's coming that way, and it's all the way, that's maybe about a quarter of a mile, or a tenth of a mile from the way the crow flies. So are we looking at our shared services agreement with them to do any sort of testing? I've looked for DEP reports on the utility authority. I've studied it. I know the water is going into the Hohokus Brook, and I've looked at the years of how many more years they're going to be. The facility has the grit station and the reservoirs and things like that. And I'm just wondering, if I'm Joe Nobody resident doing that, what is the council doing this year to fix this problem?
So at the last meeting, Councilman Ritchie talked about a meeting that we had with the utility authority. It was the mayor, myself, Councilman Ritchie, and then two representatives, the gentleman who runs the facility, and then a higher up in the utility authority. And there was a resolution passed at the last council meeting bringing the council together unanimously to have the authority address the smell issue. And the stand that they took collectively as a council is looking at the potential health risks associated with the smell.
Mm-hmm.
And so that conversation started with them directly. The resolution was then passed. It was shared with all of the local, state, county, and federal representatives also. And, to your point on reporting, since we don't control what happens there, the reporting must go to them. And so we encourage everyone that as you smell it, you call. They assured us that the same process that they had in place when this began as a heavier conversation a few years ago is still in place. And so they need to know when the report comes in for the smell so that they can track exactly where it is, what it was, and what in their facility might be going wrong. Was there some sort of breach? They need to be able to investigate that. We as the borough can't investigate that. It's not our property, and we don't own the authority, but
But we're their customer, though. We're their customer. They have a responsibility to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So that relationship has been there. The mayor has been communicating with the authority for quite a while. I don't want to speak for him, but part of that meeting was how do we move forward? And so there were some conversations on some studies that they have committed to doing for the borough to address that smell.
And is that going to be communicated out to the people that these particular studies are being conducted so that everybody can put their mind at ease that the air that they're breathing is actually not going to put toxin in their body?
So the meeting was just a few weeks ago. We haven't heard back yet that, which study exactly they'll be doing and what the time frame is. And when we get more information on that, we will definitely share that with the public.
And who's, if you don't mind me asking, who's the council liaison to the authority?
It's Councilman Ritchie. He's not here.
Okay, so, okay.
Yep.
I feel bad for him because I know everybody can just say, oh, I've been smelling this for 50 years. They're not going to give you an answer, but I don't buy that anymore. I have grandchildren and I have myself and I'm elderly and there's people around town with compromised immune systems, et cetera. And it's just unacceptable to me that we're walking into another summer And people can't even go to Matthew's Diner without smelling it in the back. And I feel bad for all the people who work there who can't even take a break because they walk outside and you just want to vomit. The smell is so bad in the June, July timeframe. It's really not fair.
Just so you know, that we've been in contact also with the governor's office. I made a contact with the governor's chief of staff. She spoke with me. They sent us an email to send to the sewer authority to let them fill out to get grant money to do some projects to help us.
Mm-hmm.
They sent people out there.
Mhm.
I don't think they were happy that people went out there. Also, I met and I'm in contact with the chief of staff for the EPA, and they've been also guiding us and telling us how to do things. And every time we have a meeting, like the meeting we had in town hall, they know about what we did. So they're keeping an eye on them also.
But it's great that you're doing all this, but how is it being communicated out to the public?
What we're doing now, we just started. We just
Okay.
started, and what we're doing is we're waiting for them to come back with some results of what they're doing.
And
And
the,
as soon as they do, on Councilman Ritchie's report, he will report to you and to all of us what's going on.
And he has been, to that point, he has been reporting every meeting pretty regularly.
I mean, I truly believe that something similar, I'm not trying to increase the budget, believe me, but Waldwick United is a great forum for everybody. I remember Nicole McNamara used to put messages out to everybody recapping things, and I think that a lot of people, if you have the masses who are really upset about the water we're drinking and the air that we're breathing, maybe a recap would be nice. I'll put it out there. I don't really care. I mean, I truly believe that people are talking about it, and not everybody, as you can see, the town of Waldwick can't come to a council meeting. I admit that I watch it online, but I think people really, truly deserve to know. And if there's appropriations, you were talking last week about an appropriation, Josh Gottheimer coming, he wants in on our town. So let's leverage him to fix this problem. It's an election year for him, too.
I reached out to him also.
Yeah, so
We're just waiting for everybody to come back and just tell us what's going on. But I think the attorney...
I just want to address one thing. The sewer authority is not an interlocal. It was founded years ago in the 50s as an interlocal between certain member municipalities. However, there was extensive litigation in, I believe it was the late 70s, early 80s, where they have now reorganized. They are an independent municipal utilities authority that we are just a customer on.
But we have a contract with them.
We have no say. We get a bill from them as a customer.
So, but we're a customer of theirs.
We're a customer.
Customer,
right.
okay.
Just like all the other towns are customers there, but there is no ownership interest or oversight or anything. The oversight for the local utilities authority is at the county. And the county has the appointment powers and everything over there. But I just want to clarify that, because I know there's a misconception out there that we as a borough have some type of say in all that. All we can do is make the complaints, and we can put pressure on them, which the council has been adamant about with numerous resolutions and things that we're working on.
I truly believe that this needs to be communicated out to people, because I'll champion it myself. I don't want to be the squeaky wheel, but I just don't want to smell it anymore. I don't even want my kids to come over to my house because I don't want them exposed to it. And they live on the, up in District 4. But it's just really, I mean, for me, it's, and little kids, whatever, baseball field, whoever's walking across from Food Emporium. I feel sorry for whoever's going into Boston Market, because do they really have an idea of what they're walking into and what customers? I used to love to go to Boston Market, but I would never go in there summertime because it's such a turnoff smelling that going into an establishment. And maybe that's why some of the businesses here are really challenged with the location. But I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And also, Laura, Councilman Ritchie did push them on a different tactic too, because they measure and report on acute sickness and illnesses and acute percentages of toxins in the air. So Councilman Ritchie pushed them on chronic exposure and pushing them on different limits. So
the ammonias, the VOCs, the hydrogen, all of that,
he produced EPA reports and many reports to them, which is what they countered what the mayor was talking about earlier, that they have to do additional testing and provide those to us, because Councilman Ritchie pushed them hard on that topic.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to... I'm sorry, two more people.
Hi, Ted, can you hear us? You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Ted. Anyone else? Anyone else? Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by